You want me to say what you just said verbatim? Okay. So people on the YouTube stream, Craig understands that you can't hear him right now. So he wanted
I think
me
we're good now.
Okay.
I forgot to plug something in.
Okay.
See, the problem was we're going to get to what Ron Rivera said today they do an annual practice at Joint Base Andrews, different kind of joint practice. Joint Base Andrews practice every year. He talked about who's going to play, who's going to not. Get you there in 30 seconds. But because I literally took my whole setup to Logan's house yesterday to record Take Command. Also, are you're really using the live video stream as a mirror right now?
My bad.
Check your hair. Really?
My bad.
Come on, bro.
I didn't mean to distract you, Craig. You were making
It's me and it's a Friday. Like
a great
the
point.
bar is very low. The point is, I had to unplug everything that's sitting over here to my left to take to Logan's house, and then I had to try to plug everything back in, and apparently I missed a wire. So we're all set now. We're good. And that means we can get on with the business of the show. So tomorrow, Commanders Bengals preseason finale. Speaking of Mr. Paulson, he'll be on the sidelines for that game along with B. Mitch and Schick. Do we have B. Mitch for 5 o'clock? Are we confirmed for that? Or are we still in the hoping that works out mode?
Let me check my cellular device.
Okay.
Let me give that brother a call.
Ton portable.
Yes.
Okay. So while you give B. Mitch a call and figure that out, I will tell everybody what we will anticipate seeing tomorrow. And that is, I think, a probable most of the offense. Definitely the one offensive line. And I kind of wonder that when Ron Rivera says we're going to see some skill position players based off our select group of offensive players, based off what we saw at practice this week, I think you're going to see a lot of starters. And I think Bieniemy just wants it that way. I think Bieniemy is one of these guys who's old school and believes that like players get better by playing. This is a chance to get better. There's inherently a risk, and we're okay with the risk. Now, I do think that Mike Tomlin is someone who agrees with this. He had a really good quote today, basically saying like football players play football. And that goes great until one of your main guys gets hurt. And it's like, well, they wouldn't have gotten hurt if they weren't out there. Yeah, you could get hurt anytime, but like the less times you put them out there this close to the season, the less chances someone gets hurt. So it's just a reality that everybody's got a little bit different tolerance. I do think that you can manage this by letting the Jahan Dotsons and Curtis Samuels, specifically those two guys, play a series or two and then get the hell out of there without putting them out there for the entire game or the entire time that the 1-0 line is out there. Like, they don't all have to play together. But if the whole point of getting Brissett some reps with the ones is to get him ready in case he's got to play during the regular season for some unforeseen circumstance, then having him play without Dotson and Samuel, even though he's already without McLaurin, seems a little bit silly. At that point, then why not just play the twos? Unless your argument is Dotson and Dotson doesn't need the work. Samuel doesn't need the work. The one offensive line does, and Jacoby's a 2, so he's the next guy up behind Sam, and so he plays. I just don't know that they have exactly a clear explanation of why some people are in and some people are out. Same thing with the running backs. Like, I have no idea what to expect. Like, I'm anticipating Antonio Gibson playing because he's had some things that I think Bieniemy wants to clean up, and I think Robinson, same thing. Like, those guys have not had clean camps. They've been good. I don't think they're unprepared for the season. I don't think they're going to all of a sudden have bad years, but the standard that Bieniemy has is extremely high. And if you make mental mistakes every now and again with enough regularity that it's like, yeah, no, it happens, then I think Bieniemy's going to want you out there. And so that led to Rivera today at Joint Base Andrews, and we appreciate Matt Paris of the Washington Times for sending us this audio. Ron Rivera to say this.
Yeah, for the most part, we have a small group of starters that will go out on the field and play a little bit. Probably play hopefully a good series and then get them out. And then we'll work the seconds all the way through, probably into the third quarter. Then we'll finish up with the rest of the young guys and give them an opportunity to play.
For Jacoby, how much will he?
Jacoby will probably play a good quarter and a half. If he does real well in the first quarter, I know Eric will want to get him out, and then we'll go from there.
For the starters, is that both sides of the ball?
No, it's a select group of a few guys on the offensive side, and we'll just go from there.
So sounds like defensive guys, no, not everyone's starting, and I would imagine almost no one starts. I could see them putting Barton and Davis out there, and really I could see them putting Barton out there. Did Anthony, you're shaking your head. I haven't had a chance to listen to the entire scrum. Did he specifically say later that none of those guys are playing?
Yeah, so literally the next question Matt Paris asked was, will Jamin play? And he said no.
I would have guessed that Jamin would not, but Barton has been a different story. Like, they don't have to play together. You could play Barton with Kalik. You could play Barton with Mayo. Barton and Mayo played together in the last game.
But I thought last game, Ron was like, Cody and Jamin, they need to, like, build some continuity because they
do.
Are new. You know, everybody else, the defensive line, the secondary, like, they've been playing together, but those two specifically haven't. So
Sure, but also I think in the game, like, what you see is Jamin knows what the hell he's doing, and Cody Barton does not entirely know what he's doing yet. Like, some of this stuff is about cohesiveness and playing together, and will everything be better when Cam Curl is out there as the lead communicator on the defense? Yes. Like, these are not simplistic single-factor problems, but hey, man, we're playing cover 3. Do you know where to drop to, and do you know our match rules and how to actually be in the right spot? Or, dude, we were brought here because you're a coverage linebacker. We're playing cover 2. Why did the ball get thrown over your head 4 times? They don't need Jamin Davis to tell Cody Barton to do anything. That's not a Jamin Davis and Cody Barton communication problem. That's a Cody Barton execution problem, or a Cody Barton mental mistake problem, depending on why he's not in the spot that he is. So did you not execute the technique, execution problem, or did you make a mental mistake and not read things out correctly, or prepare yourself to be in the right spot? And Cody Barton can fix those mistakes without Jamin Davis being on the field. He can fix those mistakes without Daron Payne and Montez Sweat and John Allen being on the field and Chase Young being on the field. None of them dudes are going to play. And that's fine. And Cam Curl shouldn't play, and Derek Forrest shouldn't play. I, at this point, would probably not play Emmanuel Forbes. I wouldn't play BSJ. I wouldn't play Kendall Fuller. Don't need to. Barton, sorry, man. Might have to play tomorrow. Maybe if you're good, it's a series, it's 2. But he just hasn't shown that he's quite up to speed yet. Jamin has, and Jamin's been in this system. So he's kind of the only defensive starter that I could see playing. Forbes and Martin did have the miscommunication in the last game. So if you wanted to put Forbes out there under that circumstance, I get it, but first-round pick, super important guy to your team. I think I'd probably just leave him off. And then, you know, I would say by the mid-second quarter, it's time for all the third and fourth stringers to fight it out for who's on the roster, to get as much tape as they can and see if they can get signed to the practice squad, get themselves on another active roster, or make their best tape for the XFL or the USFL in the spring and try again next year for the NFL. Like, that's just the reality of what this weekend is. For the starters, I think the O-line probably needs a couple of series. They're continuing to gel, but I do think they've gotten a lot better. I do think they've gotten better in games. We'll see. Wiley should be back out there. Leno's probably not going to play. But then you get to see, and we'll talk about this again in our pick 6 today. We'll pick 6 guys who could really shape how this roster comes together. And some of those will be like your Trent Scotts. How does he play at right tackle? Is that a guy they feel like they need to keep? So we'll get to that in just a little bit. But up next, we're going to have some fun here on a Friday. The Commanders had a Madden adjuster come to practice. I believe this was earlier this week. And he talked with a bunch of players and said, hey, you know, this is where we got you. Where do you think you should be? Like, where are we missing? We know you're not happy with your rating. And also, which one of your teammates needs a higher rating? So we're gonna grade the Madden adjustments. This is a very important service to the community, and someone's got to do it. Might as well be us. So we're gonna do that. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app.
Craig Hoffman.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates joins us in half an hour. Now we are confirmed with Brian Mitchell for 5 o'clock. So excited to welcome B. Mitch back to the show. The day before he is back in the booth with Chick Hernandez to call the preseason finale between the Commanders and the Bengals. So, little fun here on a Friday before we get to Yates, who we'll talk Steven Strasburg's retirement with, and a little bit of kind of perspective on the Nats and Strasburg's place in their history. The Madden ratings are a big point of consternation for players, obviously. Everyone's always mad that they're not enough unless they're in the 99 club. You're always pushing for 1 or 2 more points. And Madden and folks at EA Sports, they understand that the players have some gripes every now and again. So they deal with it. They send actual employees, actual EA Sports folks out to, like, Ashburn, for instance, and say, hey, like, what's the deal here? What did we mess up? You tell us. And by the way, don't just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your teammates. They call them Madden adjusters. And the Madden adjuster was on site in Ashburn this week, and the Commanders put together a little video to say, or to capture the conversations. So Anthony and I think it is our duty as 2 guys that play a little bit of Madden. Anthony, I think, plays a little bit more than me, but we'll see. We'll see if I start getting a little bit of more of a groove as the season goes. With all my free time, probably not. But it's 2 guys who play a little Madden. What our thoughts are on where these guys should be rated and if they're asking for legitimate adjustments. So, Anthony, I don't remember who's first, but let's get our first set of complaints in.
Yeah, let's do this.
72 overall.
All right, who was that, Anthony?
F.A. Obata.
F.A. Obata, 72 overall?
Yeah.
What if I feel really bad that I don't feel like that's that off?
I mean, the thing is, I sort of kind of agree with you.
Like, F.A.'s a good football player. He's had stretches where he's played at a 73, 74 level for sure, maybe even 75 or higher for small stretches. But I don't, 72 doesn't feel wrong for F.A. Obata. Would I want to have to tell F.A. Obata that? No, he's a large man who would tackle me. And that wouldn't end well for me. I'd be like a 14 in Madden. I don't even know how I get to 14. But that's fine. I don't think that one's too off.
I don't think so either.
Okay. Sorry, F.A. Lo siento. Who's next?
But if I was to say anybody, man, Deron Payne.
Deron Payne is crazy. That's unacceptable. Yeah, I want to talk. Let's talk.
Tell me what we got wrong here. All right.
Everything.
So you're 83 overall right now. That puts you top 10 all D tackles in the league.
Top 10?
We're talking about the spins and swims.
Swim, all that.
Shoot, finesse. That's all I was doing last year was finesse.
Yeah? Swims and spins?
Yep.
So, Deron, I think we talked about this when they came out this summer. Deron at an 83 is way too low. Where do you think Deron Payne should be?
It's tough just because of how they do have the defensive tackles rated. Like, DeForest Buckner is an 86, but he has an X factor, which is crazy because generally, if you're an X factor in Madden, you're like 92, 93, 94. You're up there as far as like the ratings go. So I don't necessarily know how they went about, rating the defensive tackles. But the fact he is top 10 and he's an 83 is crazy. Like, if you're top 10, you should at least be an 87, 88.
That's where I feel like Payne belongs. If you want to say he hasn't done it enough seasons in a row to be like a bona fide 90-plus player, fine. But Deron Payne, at minimum, should be an 88, if not an 89 or a 90. He's awesome. And I think they properly identified Deron and the Madden adjuster there, the weakness in the Madden rating. That's not a weakness in the game. Just because he's big, strong, and powerful does not mean that man does not have finesse. The hands that he has on these swim moves and these little rips inside, they don't look like they're finesse moves because they're so powerfully done. but the quickness and the finesse that you have to put on those things, he's got it.
Exactly. We've seen it on full display all training camp, you know?
Yeah. So I think Deron Payne, sorry, FA, but Deron's, his complaint is valid. Deron Payne, I hope that he gets adjusted. He should be, what is our final grade for Deron Payne?
I would give Deron, you said 88?
I said 87 minimum.
Yeah, I think 87, 88 is where he belongs.
I said 88, but if he was an 87, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah.
So 88,
I think
88 feels most correct.
Yeah.
Okay, 88 for Deron Payne according to the Hoffman Show Madden ratings. Who's next?
I would just like to be in Madden, you know?
Oh, this is Mason
You can give me like
Brooks.
a 12 overall.
All right,
You just want to throw me in there, you know?
So I've heard great things about you,
Okay.
about your training camp.
Nice.
We're gonna get you in.
Can you give me a beard?
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic. Mason Brooks, offensive guard, 12 rating, but has a beard. They put radio hosts in. You think we get in?
I mean, you already said that you'd give yourself a 14.
Yeah, as a football player, I'd hope I'd be a lot higher rated as a radio host.
Yeah, but Mason Brooks is actually a football player, so the fact that he asked for a 12 is, you know.
I think he should have asked higher.
Yeah, slightly.
I think he wears 64. That might be too high, based off the fact that he's an undrafted free agent. Like, that's not me. My personal Mason Brooks rating might be around a 64. But just ask for like a 50, dude. But I think it was pretty funny. He asked for a 12, but just make sure my beard is there. I don't care if I suck, but make sure the beard is there.
They got a lot of 50s. I want to know who the lowest rated player in Madden is, actually.
I'm sure we can look that up. All right, who's next, and I'll look that up.
I'm probably the fastest lineman in the league. That's I would make me 90.
90? He's not faster than me, baby. Let's be real.
All right, so that was Chris Paul and then Sadiq Charles. Chris Paul saying that he is the fastest player fastest lineman in the league is not true, not remotely true. So I don't know what to make of that. I think at that point if you're the Madden adjuster, you just look at him and go, sorry, dude, like you're lying. You have to stay where you are because you lied.
Yeah, Chris Paul was bugging. Bugging.
By the way, the worst player in the game is Rams tight end Alex Ward. He's a 26 overall.
Oh,
Man,
my gosh. How's he
are
in
all
Madden?
Why are all the worst players tight ends? What do they have against
26?
tight ends? I did notice, too, by the way, that, like, there's, like, a bunch of tight ends in the 20s and 30s. Like, every single lowest-rated player on Madden's website is a oh, you know what? These are not tight ends. These are long snappers.
Oh, okay.
That's why, because I kept
okay.
scrolling down, and Cameron Cheeseman's a 33.
Okay, cool.
So I'd have to keep going to see who like the actual worst position players. Nathan Peterman's a 49. I think there's someone named Dresser Wynn who's a Rams quarterback. I've never heard of him. He's a 50, and Nathan Peterman is a 49. Yikes indeed.
I think this next person that we have up, I think we'll have to increase his rating.
Okay. Who we got?
Nah, man, we ain't doing all that freedom stuff right now. We gotta talk
Oh, I know who this is.
The number one rated strong safety is Hackett with an 84.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do.
You happy with that?
Yeah, that's cool. But the speed, like,
So you think that needs to go up a
people
point?
gonna be running
Got
past me on the
to
game.
get our guy JR up. Jeremy Reeves, way too low.
That was not Jeremy Reeves.
Wait, who was that? Oh, that was Cam. That was Cam Curl.
Curl.
Reeves
Yep.
also had complaints. But, yeah, no, that was Cam Curl. I think his overall is like an 83. Yeah, I think Cam Curl's like an 85. Like, it's not terribly off, but certain attributes, I get it. I get why he's upset. Jeremy Reeves then went, and then I think you get to the offensive guys. So let's go ahead and let the audio play out, Anthony. Because how much time is left on the audio? Like
about a minute.
Okay,
Literally
let's go ahead and play it out. I think the next guy you'll hear complaining is Jeremy Reeves, and then we get to the receivers defending their quarterback.
Couldn't say yourself who's the most underrated player on this team.
We gotta talk about Sam though.
Yeah?
Sam, first of all, y'all got him looking like a random.
Come on.
Show the camera.
Oh, so I got good news. I gotta get it right, man. I gotta get it right. It will be right by kickoff weekend.
I gotta get my quarterback right.
I catch so many balls. I run read routes. I run top routes. Zero.
I gotta.
Click and go back this way. Over here. Click and go that way.
All right. Come on over.
Hey, come on, like we gotta talk about this.
What more could I do? We know you're a thumper. 85 hit pounds.
Okay.
All right. I think tackling can be higher.
Way higher.
But you
way
need more
higher.
opportunities, right? Zone coverage 69.
Okay, the zone cover's gotta go up.
If we had a special teams OVR, you'd be a 90 plus.
Got 1,000%.
You know, I've got some intel here from your teammates and some of your beat writers. You're a really good tackler. So I think we might bump that up a little bit.
Appreciate
at least
that.
3 points.
Appreciate
So I
that.
think that at least gets into the 70s.
Okay, that's all I'm asking. Appreciate that,
Thanks
boss.
for coming by, man.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you.
Put it.
So that you had added the order backwards, but you got the good news is Sam Howell is apparently going to have a real Sam Howell face by the time opening weekend comes around. And Jeremy Reeves should be in the 70s, which I think is where he belongs.
So, I mean, Sam Howell also doesn't belong as a 66 overall. That is
No, definitely
crazy.
not. But at least it's more understandable because he's, not done much in the league yet.
Yeah, but you got people that just got drafted that are higher than him, so it's just like
That's also
they haven't done
true.
anything in the league either. So
That is also true. All right. Well, the Commanders, as usual, not getting a lot of respect. For many years, they earned that, but this year's crew does, at this time, feel like it deserves a little bit more. All right, we get back here on the Hoffman Show. Clinton Yates joins us for his Friday visit. Going to talk about Steven Strasburg's place in Nationals history and a story that hits even closer to home. That's next on the Team 980.
You can listen to the Team 980 on your smart speaker. Just
I tried to warn you, bro. It is
You
a
did.
mess in downtown Nashville every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Not even
We moved hotels the next night. I still am waiting on my refund for that. But yeah, we moved hotels the second night.
Wow.
It was fun. You say they rely on them. We went to brunch with my buddy the next day, who is a Nashville native and has lived in Nashville long enough that he remembers when it was more than just the Bachelorette capital of the world. And he's like, yeah, we're pretty much on the woo girl economy.
Yeah,
That
that's precisely what's going on. The downtown businesses cater to that. If you try to get it shut down, you're probably the one getting thrown out. It is what it is right now. It's weird, but Nashville, baby. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So I will add one more small part to this story, and this is the part, frankly, that I've been waiting to tell you all week as well. That was kind of part one. We got quality Yates reaction. Part two, as we leave the hotel the next morning to go to breakfast. Remember, the wall's very thin. So it's not going where you think it's going. But as we walk down the hallway, my dear sweet wife just starts saying in a slightly elevated volume of voice, it's been proven that the later groups stay out and make noise and all this stuff at their bachelorette weekend, the higher the divorce rate
Oh God.
in the wedding,
So
and
she's
also
talking
the better
trash,
chances,
basically.
and also the better chances.
Wow. Okay. Okie dokie. So Rachel was pissed, basically.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of tolerance for the woo girls. They say on the internet, like, feel free to post stuff, like your friends' photos, do whatever. But like whatever you do for your own well-being, don't read the comments. Comment section, bad idea. What do we do?
we read those comments, baby.
That is exactly what we do. That was a little bit better. I still feel like that one was a little muted. I think Sometimes it feels like you build yourself up a little too much, and then sometimes you don't
I ain't
quite
want to
go
go
for it.
screaming all the way. The thing is, though, my mic is a little lower than yours, so maybe I could have actually, did what I really.
Mike
set out
also
to do.
moves. You can go, ooh. Did you know you could play tricks with a microphone?
I think I'll try that next time.
Okay. You want to give another shot? Or you
We read those comments, baby.
There we go. All right. I feel ready now. Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where if you're watching, you see the one and only Clinton Yates. What up?
What's going on, man? You can see my pencil tricks for those of you watching on YouTube. This is what I do. You know, like that deal. It's like back to school, so this is what we're on.
Support your local back to school drive. There are many. All right. So speaking of the kids, not a very fun way, we're going to talk Strasburg here in a second. But this story that came out a week ago about Northwest Little League, and people that listen weekly and know that you come on with us every Friday, might remember 2 weeks ago you were so pumped and so proud of that group. That's where the Little League team you played on, they got so close to making it to Williamsport. And then we find out pretty quickly after that there's quite a bit of chaos behind the scenes, and chaos is even putting it lightly. For those that didn't see the story, what are the most important parts of it? And then we can get into some reaction.
So the Washington Post Metro section wrote a story about Northwest Little League, which for those of you who don't know is the boundaries are basically upper Northwest, in a lot of where a lot of those private school areas are. When I played there, I was boundaried in because of the school that I went to, and my dad happened to live in the neighborhood at the time. Whereas I grew up sort of on the other side of town on Georgia Avenue for the most part. But, that's how it works. It wasn't sort of a controversial thing at the time. However, what is the case now with Northwest Little League is not just issues of boundary stuff, which is sort of basic operational Little League kind of shenanigans, for lack of a better term. But, and I'm being very personal here, and I don't want this to be a direct shot at anybody, but as it turns out, the president of Northwest Little League, a guy I've known my whole life, a guy who is now the head coach of the All-Star team, is effectively accused of running an operation that a lot of people feel is just not above board. And for those of you that have been watching Williamsport for the last week, seeing these kids and seeing them give their efforts and seeing their parents and seeing the tears and seeing the plays, you know how hard it is as a kid and as a family to get through this process at all. If bad actors are involved, it makes all of it kind of scummy for everyone. And I'm not going to say that my league is the only league that does this. Lord knows where youth baseball is as a whole. And that's the reason, Craig, that I mentioned it's in the Metro section and not the sports section. Because if it were the sports section of the Washington Post, they'd have to take a whole larger look at how travel ball and all this stuff has affected what is the volunteer, community-based effort that is Little League Baseball. Of course, it ends on the big stage in Williamsport, but as a result, that means that the big money players of travel ball have sort of gotten into the mix and poisoned the water. That's a separate discussion from what happened at Northwest Little League. All I know is that when I get a 46-page complaint report from a parent and a person involved in the league about all the stuff going on, I didn't even have the stones to go to Williamsport this year. I just couldn't face it. I was like, this is just not what I wanted to deal with. And the bottom line is, when it comes down to being about the kids, there's kind of one way to do it. And every other way kind of feels slimy. And this just felt a little bit slimy. I feel bad for all the parents involved. I feel bad for all the kids involved. And quite frankly, for those who are running the board at Northwest Little League, if they think that they're doing the right thing and this is just a bunch of rabble-rousers trying to screw it up for them, then I feel bad for them too. But I know what it looks like as an alum of that league and that all-star team. And the word, Gregory, is embarrassing.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 46-page report here, and it helps, or / hurts, however you want to look at it. It's like, oh, this is an area where there's a lot of parents who are lawyers. Yes. And that's part of what's happening here is if I read it correctly and I'm remembering correctly, like some of the kids who feel like they got screwed, like their parents are pretty high-priced DC attorneys. And those are types of people that, if there's a complaint to be had, are pretty good at filing it. And so how much of this is kind of, like, do you think, like, these are legitimate complaints versus parents who are a part of this Little League world where they think their kids are entitled to everything, and everybody can't have everything.
That's the biggest question I've gotten is, are you sure this is an issue? Are you sure this isn't this? Are you sure this isn't that? Well, look, I played in that league, and I know what it was like, and I remember how things went, and I know people that are involved in the league, and I'm not saying that on some, I don't even know, like some.
It's not braggadocious, like you're
right. No, I mean, this is the world that I live in, and what I mean by that is that, like, it doesn't take much to make a situation like that bad for everybody. This is not, you do not have to be Al Capone to run a little league that is, not exactly doing it the right way. And again, for that matter, a lot of leagues operate that way. These kind of politics are basic to what is, again, volunteer-based youth programs. Do I think a 46-page memo was a bit much? Of course. But if you've got the time and you've got the interest and you've got the actual facts, well, I mean, what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't have to come to this either way in my regard. And that's why it was so disheartening, is that it'd been one thing if they had made Williamsport. Maybe this would have blown up in their faces at the time. I doubt it, because people probably would have just overlooked it because of the fact that they made that achievement. But at the same time, that's kind of what bothers me, is that you kind of feel like, man, was this a ball don't lie kind of situation? Although that's probably benefited other programs. Overall, I just look forward to the health of Northwest Little League, the league that taught me so much about who I am, to getting back to what it should be. The challenger circuit should be what it is in terms of giving opportunities for kids to play that don't have the same physical capabilities as other players. The softball program should be thriving the same way that it should be. And the boys and the girls who play Little League baseball should be allowed to thrive and grow as best they can, and not by the whims of 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or 25 adults who seem to look at this all as some sort of power play for their lives.
Right. Yes. It is important to remember, as always, this is Little League. These are children, and we should act accordingly. Clinton Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, to the big leagues and kind of the big story of the week here in D.C. on the baseball front, and that is the retirement pending of Steven Strasburg. Press conference coming up September 9th. And I mean, when you heard the news yesterday, what was your initial reaction? Because, you can't be surprised intellectually, but it still hits you pretty hard, I'd imagine.
I'm glad he had the guts to do it, if I'm being very honest. This is a guy who, from the beginning, his delivery, the way he threw the baseball, I could get into inverted W's and arm slots and release points and all this. It was a point of scrutiny for nearly an entire generation in terms of how he threw. Was this going to be able to hold up? Look at the injuries. People used him as a case study as to how you were going to teach other people of that size to pitch the baseball and to be able to do what he did. He turned into a bit of a sacrificial lamb in terms of that. He was hurt a lot. It was difficult for him to get 15 or 20 starts in a row because of the veracity with which he threw. And I'm not saying velocity. I mean how hard he threw and what his body motion was and how that affected his particular kinetic chain. That said, he also embodied something at a franchise level that was very difficult to do. He was very publicly picked number 1 as a guy that was going to be the savior for a new franchise, as a pitcher. Reminder, he got picked before Bryce Harper did and stayed longer than Bryce Harper did and actually won a title. People tend to forget. This wasn't just a talent thing with him. When it came to what he upheld on his shoulders from a star standpoint, I don't know that you could have picked anybody better than Steven Strasburg to do it for the Washington Nationals. And the way that it ended, fine by me. We got what we wanted. And I just feel that for the fan base of DC, if you've got a problem with Strasburg, then you don't really understand what was happening when this team came to town.
Right. And I think if anybody has a problem with Strasburg now, it's like, oh, they gave him all that money after the World Series. And it's like, well, in an uncapped sport, who cares? It doesn't handicap you the same way, although the learners are handicapping themselves. That's a different conversation. And, of course, they also gave him an uninsured contract, which seemed unwise based off his injury history, and thus they will pay every cent of it. Yep. But to go to your point there at the end of you don't understand what it was like pre-Strauss. When you think of Nationals pre-Strasburg and kind of what that environment was when he's drafted, paint the picture for people that might not remember what he was drafted into and why he is so vitally important and so revered by fans who have been fans for that long.
So let's take this back a couple of generations. I'll mention my dad because I mentioned this in any conversation about the Nationals. My dad was born in 1944. He's lived in D.C. since he was 10 years old, and the family migrated north from North Carolina, and he grew up, went to college, went to high school, did everything in D.C., and that's where I was raised. He saw 2 baseball teams leave, Craig. 2. The Texas Rangers and the Minnesota Twins exist because the Washington Senators left the district on 2 separate occasions. So by the time that the Nationals came back, even though it wasn't an expansion franchise, even though we had effectively picked up someone else's seconds in Montreal and the Expos, it was a new franchise and the hope was real. They were playing at RFK, obviously where the football team played for many years, obviously where DC United played for many years, and there was so much sports history in there. They get the new ballpark. They pick this kid who comes from Tony Gwynn's program at San Diego State. Baseball royalty. He's the kind of pitcher that you look at, and speaking of Little League, you say, oh, well, he's clearly bigger and better than everybody else. Obviously, he's going to dominate. He was doing this at the college level in D1. And it was the kind of thing where you're like, okay, if somebody's getting paid to be a scout to pick this guy, well, then we could all be scouts. That's how good he was. And that's important to say because it meant that coming into the league, and coming into the league meaning the minor leagues, his expectations were off the charts. But what it also meant for Nationals fans is that for people that were relatively new to what the baseball development world was, you got to see a star develop along the way. And it taught fans in DC a little bit of something about how this all truly works. You don't just pluck guys out of the draft like a John Wall and give them the key to the city and then they're rookie of the year and then they win the summer league or whatever and then they win a dunk contest and they're a superstar. It doesn't happen like that. Washington fans got to learn about the process via Strauss. Bryce comes along, same sort of situation. By the time they both get there, Strauss is the guy on the mound, Bryce is the guy on the field. But Strauss was somebody that wasn't a big talker. All he wanted to do was play baseball, and he had stuff that was absolutely electric. There's a reason why the word Straussmas exists. It's because when he finally threw that first day, it was literally a moment in Major League Baseball. And I got to tell you, Craig, as somebody that was there in Houston when he was on the mound, when it mattered for the Nationals, and it was he and his teammates who figured out, oh, guess what? They're cheating. Let's switch it up. They beat them in that moment on the road. That does not happen without Steven Strasburg, and for that reason, he's one of one to me. He's the OG National, Gregory.
Yeah, so I want to circle back to that in a moment, but I think that 2019 World Series is so interesting for him specifically because there was so much consternation about so much of his career, and none of it's really his fault. It starts with them saying, hey, man, we're shutting you down. So, they're going to the playoffs, and, we can imagine what sports talk radio was like back then.
The shutdown fueled sports radio for like 3 entire baseball seasons. It was nuts.
You don't have to imagine. You were doing it at the time. I was yapping away up in Syracuse, in college at the time. But you had the shutdown, and then you had injuries with relative frequency. I mean, I was looking up at his career stats yesterday. Dude's never won 20 games in a season, which is crazy considering his unquestioned greatness. But he literally never was able to put it together for long enough to have 20 wins in a season. Now, he had some seasons where the numbers were spectacular, and you're like, how did he not have 20 wins? But that's a separate story. But he never did. And then 2019, there's just vindication. After 2019, after what he did in that season, and specifically in that postseason, there was such a kind of crowning of like, oh, yes, this is why we made such a big deal out of this guy. Finally, it all makes sense. For anybody that had doubt, you cannot doubt him anymore. And I think that is a beautiful story in many ways.
It's not my money, Craig, but if there was ever a time in which, even as a fan of sport, not just as somebody that was a huge Nationals fan at the time, I would have said, give him whatever he wants. If they win this one, give him whatever he wants, even if he never plays another day, which was pretty much close to what happened. Because again, there's no world in which you can replace the value of what he already gave to the Washington Nationals fan base, learning and loving every part of the process to build a championship team. That squad and Rizzo, they maxed out that talent on a level that I'm not sure we're going to see for a long time in the major leagues. He said it. He said the line to our boy Jesse Doherty. Sometimes you're the buzzsaw. That was Strauss who said that. He wrote a whole book off of that. That was the whole identity of that team in those playoffs, and he was right, and he was the leader of that. Again, there's no world in which I'm going to look at Strauss as a wasted talent. A lot of that is through the lens of as a Nationals fan who was there, and so it's easy to say, well, it was worth it. But at the same time, for a guy who worked that hard, for a guy who had that much on his shoulders, reminder, Bryce left the team before they won that World Series, okay? So this is not just a 1-2 guy thing. One guy stayed, and one guy got the MVP. And that guy, to me, is a guy who, look, we can argue about statues outside of buildings and all that other kind of stuff, but I don't really care about that. All I know is that when I think of the 2019 Washington Nationals, the first person I think of is Steven Strasburg.
Clinton Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show. So that gets us to the kind of key question we asked yesterday, or the fun question, sports radio-y question we asked yesterday. Who is the most important person to ever wear a Washington Nationals jersey? To me, there's actually kind of a clear-cut top 6, and that's Strauss, Zimmerman, Jason Worth, Max Scherzer, Bryce Harper, Juan Soto. And that's
okay.
The 6.
I
think you could probably include some others, but like those are the 6.
I do think, though, that there's the Scherzer, there is the Strasburg, Harper, Zimmerman tier, and then there's kind of everybody else. And that's not sort of a knock to everybody else, but again, I think it's hard for people to understand how important the impact of, again, having minor league players that you were paying attention to when your team was terrible. Most big league teams do not think about this with any regularity. Some do. I live out here in LA where the Dodgers farm system is a large topic of conversation because it's such a big deal for who they are. But that's because that's how their system works. They don't necessarily have 1 or 2 stars that are going to save the franchise. That is where the Rizzas, the Harpers, the Strasburgs were. People were looking at them like, please get here. We can't wait. I cannot imagine what that kind of pressure was like for those kind of players. And ultimately, I think that's why those guys are on different tiers. Some guys, the Jason Worths, the Max Scherzers, they came here to solidify something that was sort of already built, and they took it to the next level. That's not what happened with the previous 3 dudes. They were drafted by the team, came up through the system, landed in the big leagues, and 2 of them, as in 2 out of the 3, not Harper, won the daggone thing and were critical parts of it even after parts of their careers had broken down. There's sort of it's kind of the last boyish attraction I'll have to a team is that squad, because at this stage of my life, it's kind of not coming back in terms of who I am and what I've seen. But that team, I mean, I remember when all of them got to the squad. I can see their signing days in my mind's eye when they're wearing suits and ugly Nationals jerseys over top of ties. You know what I'm saying? 3 of those guys are in that book, and the others are not. And that's what makes the difference to me.
Yeah, Worth and Scherzer gave a validity, like a kind of a cosign to what they were building here in a way that's super important. And you almost forget, because Soto's career, you just get mad that they traded him, like, even if you understand. And by the way, that's going to be part of his legacy, but you just kind of get mad and you forget, like, oh, yeah, he was incredible in that postseason, in that 2019 run as a child, basically. And his legacy is still going, because if they kickstart this next group off of the trade of him, it's like, oh, yeah, Juan Soto's legacy is pretty good. A World Series, and he set up the next 10 years of Nationals baseball.
Count your boy Rizzo in on that, okay? Because that's how you're supposed to do it. If you got to get rid of a guy who's a super fan favorite and you're going to make people wear it, you better make sure that the guys you get back are any good, because that reflects on you as much as it reflects on the player. These boys are having a little fun at the end of this season, Gregory. Dare I say, making some noise, which really means nothing, but, they're playing good, and that's how you want to end the season.
They've got the 3rd best record in the NL since the break. It's nuts.
What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? That's what you want.
What are you going to do is go re-sign Soto when he's like, screw you, San Diego. This is not fun at all. That'd be amazing.
The return of the prodigal son. Can you imagine? He'd be like, I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what I was thinking, leaving to go to Southern California with all this beautiful beach and beautiful sky and great weather.
Yeah.
Like I did.
Why would anyone want to go to San Diego?
No idea. That. But the long story short is that Strasburg retiring is ultimately a fitting ending for a guy that gave everything he had and got to the top of the mountain. And if you're the kind of person that doesn't understand what that means, well, then you probably were never a Nationals fan, and I'm okay with that. The dude is minted, and that will never change.
All right, last but not least, speaking of Southern California baseball stars with Clinton Yates here on the Hoffman Show. All right, Ohtani injures the elbow. He was going to be a $500 million player probably this offseason, at least, which is crazy. What is he now? He's still probably the best hitter in baseball, but you don't know if he could ever pitch again. And if you want him to ever pitch again.
Yeah.
So what does that do to the conversation?
I'm not going to put this in the framework of an I told you so, but I will say that things that we've talked about is I was always concerned about how viable the two position option was long term. You know, this was a question for me of his coming into the league. This was a question for me with this level of workload that he had, and not in a cynical way, but just in a, are you really going to pay a player to play two positions when the human body is not ever having proved, you've never proved that the human body can do that for this long, and he's already done it long enough. It is very sad to that extent, meaning we will probably never see him throw like that again. He's already had one Tommy John surgery, and if you get two TJs, the ability to come back and pitch on a major league level at all, never mind be dominant, is very difficult. But ultimately, and this is kind of a weird take, but like him not having the choice in his hands to make, I ultimately think saves a lot of people in this situation. He's not pitching anymore. He's playing baseball. He's hitting. He's in the field. He's doing something else. I think that if he's able to put that behind him and say, I gave this my best shot, I won a Cy Young, which he might this year, I think you can respect it. And he goes on and says, I'm just going to be the ball player that I can be at the plate and in the field. And he doesn't have to grapple with that with every single season that he takes on, with every other contract that he gets. The guy's still going to make bazillions of dollars, okay? He hits the ball too hard, he runs the bases too well, he's too smart, and people like him too much. But if the taxation on his body is taken away, he might even be even better at the plate and in the field than we imagine, because he doesn't have to worry about pitching every fifth day. I feel bad for him personally, but for the overall world of baseball, we got to see the best. It's not like this didn't happen. It very much happened this season, and if you watched it, you'll remember it and you'll appreciate it. This is very much a remember it because it happened, don't cry because it's gone situation for me.
Clinton Yates, of course, ESPN.com, Around the Horn on your television. He's got pencil tricks. He writes with pencils, too. Actually, probably more with keyboards because, it's a digital age we're in now.
It's 2023.
And he's here with us every Friday. Thank you, sir.
The show's back next week. I'm back on. You can see me on TV with my gorgeous mug. Thank you, Gregory.
You're welcome. Watch him on television.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
Secondary wise, I mean, there's a lot of talk about Forbes. He had some tough one-on-one reps that were kind of making their way.
Can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is like one-on-ones are designed for the offense to win, and especially the offense to win if they want to take a DB inside towards the middle of the field where there would typically be help. And every single one of everyone being like, oh, he got smoked. It's like, yeah, the dude ran a triple move where the quarterback would have been sacked and then ran to where the help would be.
And also all those are in the red zone, like red zone one-on-ones. So yes, it's just so frustrating when fans get all crazy about it. Because red zone, you're going to run quarters, like red quarters all the time. So there's going to be a dude standing right there. Like if you want to run in, good luck. You're going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't work that way. Go run in there. Fine. Get smoked by that guy. Get smoked by Foster or whoever, or Cam Curl. So it's always super frustrating. And in those man situations, in the red zone situations, you'll see the quarterback hold the ball longer because it's they're running a dig, they're running an out, they're running and if anything, the pressure is more acute in the red zone. So the ball has to be out quicker. So it's all this stuff. And it's just And so what I will say is I thought his reps were competitive. I thought he was in relatively good position. Did he lose a couple reps? Yes, but I don't think that situation is entirely realistic. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thinking about a rant today, and you want to know what? I'm in the mood. We're gonna go for it. This is an unplanned rant. It's one I was trying to keep in my back pocket, but I'm just gonna go for it. Some of the comments that I read through on, and look, social media is a cesspool. Social media is people. Social media is fans. Social media is the same calls that we've been getting in sports radio for 30 years put into a tweet or a YouTube comment or whatever. These are real people with real opinions who think these things. And I truly do not understand how some of y'all like sports, because it seems like your entire sports fan existence is miserable. You always want everyone fired, everyone traded. And I truly do not understand how you live that way. Sports are supposed to be fun. Sports are, there are serious parts to it, but the flippancy with which you just want to trade Chase Young. It's August, at the time I read this comment, 15th. They're not trading Chase Young. What are you talking about? Ron Rivera should be fired. EB should be the head coach. When was the last time an NFL head coach got fired in August? What I mean this sincerely. If that's all you think about all day is the coach getting fired, why are you here? What part of this is fun for you? I don't get it. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. A little later in the show, our pick six at 6, who are the 6 players that I'm watching tomorrow against the Bengals for the Commanders. Then Logan Paulson's thoughts on where we stand going into the game at 6:15 via Take Command. Right now, though, Logan's broadcast partner on the call tomorrow with Chick Hernandez. For Not My Beat today, our pleasure to welcome in Brian Mitchell. But first, Anthony, of course, we must have our proper introduction.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
And of course, by a proper introduction, I mean, we have to play that fancy imaging because Brian Mitchell needs no introduction. He should be in the Hall of Fame, longtime Commander, longtime Eagle, and of course, host of B. Mitch and Finley on 106.7 The Fan. B. Mitch, appreciate some time on a Friday, man.
How did y'all, man, thank you. How did y'all know I like T.I. motivation?
Yeah, that'll work. We got you your music, but if that's all we got to do to introduce you, then just be like, Brian's on the show. That works for me. People know your bio, and if they don't, although I will say, Brian, we actually almost called you yesterday on the fly because we had one of the dumbest calls that I've ever had on this show, which is saying something. We've had some doozies, but someone was talking about Kaz Allen, and they were like, that guy reminds me of Brandon Banks and Brian Mitchell, and I wanted to jump through the phone and take their phone and throw it in the Potomac for dare putting Kaz Allen, who I like, and Brandon Banks, who was electric, in the same sentence as you. I was not happy.
Two totally different styles, I think. Brandon Banks was 159 pounds, and I weighed 220. I weighed 216 to 220. So I think you got, when you compare and look at a Brandon and me, it's kind of Jerome Bettis and some other small running back.
Darren Sproles?
Darren Pollard. The kid Pollard right now.
Oh, yeah, Tony Pollard.
Something like that. Yeah, Tony Pollard.
Yeah. Also, you played, 15 years? How many years you play in the league?
14.
Yeah, he played 3. And, no disrespect to Brandon Banks. That's 3 more than I will ever think about playing. But come on, man. And Kaz Allen ain't made the roster yet. But transitioning to the current team, what have you made of Allen? Because, if we take it out of historical context and comparing it to, you, and just say within this current 53-man roster and the chances that he's got to make it as a punt returner and also what he's done at receiver, where do you think that receiver battle stands right now and Allen's place in it?
I think he's shown that he can play like a slot receiver. He can be a guy that's a backup. But I think he showed his explosiveness when he's on a return. He's been sure-handed with it, and I keep hearing people say, well, they're unsure of him catching the ball. I'm like, I was horrible catching the ball when I first got it as a punt return. I had never done it in my life. But when you look at this kid, and I go back to his high school days where he scored 72 touchdowns his senior year in high school, I don't care who you're playing against, 72 touchdowns, 72 touchdowns. And I just think he has a skill set that you need to figure out some way to use that. Look, I think a lot of people put the guys back there on punt return to be sure-handed. That's understandable. But it's still a position that you can change the game with. The kick return is taken out the game. Punt return is still there. You hold somebody, they punt it, and your guy can get it across the 50 or score a touchdown for you. That throw a hell of a lot of momentum to your side.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that the reliability question for him is more at receiver versus as a returner. And it's where it becomes interesting. So if you're Rivera and, obviously Nate Katzer's going to be in one ear and EB's going to be in the other, and Jack might have some defensive guy that he wants to sneak an extra guy on the roster. Like, how are you trying to balance the fact that Milne is the more versatile receiver, even if he's not as explosive, and the fact that Allen, is definitely the bigger upside play at both positions?
Well, I think, Milne niggas see that he's versatile, but I think Allen can do everything you need him to do as well. When you really look at it, Milne or Allen, Kaz is not going to be on the field most times. It's going to be Terry, Jahan, Diami, Curtis, Samuel. Those guys will be the ones on the field most of the time. But I need a guy that could give me some explosiveness. And I think when you look at those two guys, which guy do you think is going to break it and take it to the house for you and has the ability to do that? I think Kaz Allen does. I watched him out there catching punts and doing different things. He seemed very, very comfortable doing it. And I tell people over and over again, my first time catching punt, the guy, Ralph Moshenko, punted me 20 punts. I touched one of them. And I'm not saying that's the truth. I didn't catch any. I touched one, and look what I ended up doing. I think if the guy is willing to put the work in, he has the skill set and the upside that you want to give him a chance at it.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you. I wish more coaches took the upside play. I just been doing this long enough, as obviously have you, where you see that coaches tend to be really conservative and take the guy that they can quote unquote trust, even if what they trust him to do is not much. Brian Mitchell's with us here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. I think one of the other really interesting stories that's kind of come out this week, B-Mitch, as we look at this roster and try to project the 53, is Ricky Strasburg's emergence as a guy who can really play guard and play well at right guard specifically, not just be a backup center. How do you think that ultimately affects the final roster, and what do you want to see from that O-line group tomorrow?
Well, I think Ricky Strasburg is going to make the team no matter what. He's a high enough draft pick where he's going to make it. But the fact that he can be a center and a guard now, that makes him even more valuable. You look at Lucas that's a swing tackle, one of the best swing tackles in the league. He's going to be on your team, okay? He can play right tackle, left tackle. You got a guy who can play right guard and center, and if he can play right and center, he can probably play left guard as well. And I think that's going to make it to where if Ricky can play multiple positions, you got Lucas playing multiple positions, and you get some other guys that can do that, then you may be able to keep 9 or 10 instead of trying to keep 11. You can keep somebody at another position. You look at the tight end position right now with Logan being hurt right now, and they have a lot of guys that they like. Maybe keep one extra tight end. It gives them a little bit more flexibility when a guy can play multiple positions.
One of the positions where they're heavy, that they're going to have to make some tough decisions, is defensive line. Do you have any kind of leaning on where they go there, or do they wind up just keeping all 11 guys and still cutting a good football player?
Well, I think this is a good place to be in. Normally when they cut people, nobody picks up the other guys. Now they have to worry about who we're going to let go. They've had a strong camp from Andre Jones Jr., from our and
Anthony, let's go ahead and put B-Mitch on hold and see if we can get his phone to start behaving on us. Of course, Brian Mitchell with us, talking about Andre Jones, who, like B-Mitch, Louisiana Lafayette guy, making that defensive line room really, really difficult for the coaches. Let's see if we still haven't. Anthony, can you just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on the? All right, it looks like we're going to get B-Mitch right back. Just cell phone monsters. B-Mitch, we kind of got the gist of what you're saying about Andre Jones. We can pick up your thought where you were.
Well, when you look at Andre Jones, he's a 7th-round pick. He's on a rookie minimum salary. There are some other guys out there that may be about the same as him, not much better, but they make a lot more money. And I think this team is going to be looking at situations where, they're going to have some ability to move around. I still don't think the people that we're looking at right now, that 90, that's going to be the people that they're choosing from. When they release other guys off other teams, maybe they go somewhere else. They may look for an offensive lineman from somewhere else. But I think it's a good thing when you draft a guy in the 7th round, and he's good enough to where you're thinking about, damn, we got to find a way to put this guy on the field. And I think Andre has done that. He's been better than KJ Henry in my book, and he's a 5th-round pick.
No, I agree. I think Henry's an interesting case because he's a 5th rounder. You obviously like him. It's not like he's had a bad camp, but he's probably not a guy you could sneak to practice squad. And at that point, you want to risk him to waivers. And that's why I think it's difficult. And all of a sudden, you're hearing could a James Smith-Williams, a Casey Tuhill, guys like that who have been around and been really big-time contributors for this team, especially last year. I mean, James was really good as a starter for this team last year. Yeah. And it feels crazy to me that his name is all of a sudden, and Casey Tuhill's name, are in the, maybe camp of guys who could wind up on the wrong side of a numbers game.
Well, when you look at it, man, that's football. A guy could be very, very good one year, and the reason he was good because the starter that he was playing behind got hurt, he went and played well. But if that starter comes back and play well, and then they find somebody a little cheaper than you, they'll normally go with the cheaper thing. Football today is about dollars and cents. And I'm talking about the SENSE, not the CENTS. If it makes sense to get a person that may be a little younger, plays about the same, but makes a lot less money, we'll keep him because they have a lot of money spent already on the D-line in other positions.
Brian Mitchell with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, catch him 10 to 2 daily over on The Fan with JP Finley for B. Mitch and Finley. The debate, I'm sure you guys had it on your show too, but the debate of the last couple of days is, who should play tomorrow? If you're in charge of everything tomorrow, who are you putting out there that you feel like you want to see more from or need to see more from, and who are you protecting from making sure that they're not going to get hurt in the preseason finale?
The thing for me is I think a lot differently than most people. I would want to see everybody play at least a little bit, but I understand that doesn't happen today. But like guys that are like younger starters that need to work, guys that may be coming back from an injury who's healthy now, they may need to get out there so I can see what they're doing before they have to go full speed in the first game. I would play people more than I would not play them, because I watched this team for the last 3 to 4 years, and I've always said they got to start faster, okay? And what we do, we basically wrap a lot of people in bubble wrap, and then we start the season and we want them to be able to hit the ground running 100 miles per hour with people that's already been doing it. And I think that's where we start slow at. But, they've added a much more rigorous camp this year. Hopefully that helps them out. But think about this. This is the last game they're going to play. Then they get a whole week off. Then they got the week of the next game to get prepared. They can get back by then. And, you just have to – sometimes you got to just not play, not coach scared, and just say, drop on your knees and play a little bit. Because football is a sport where you're probably going to get injured at some time. And if you don't play, you just prolong it a little longer.
Right. So unlike most people that I have this conversation with when we take calls on it, you actually played 14 years in the league and have personal experience to explain kind of the ramp-up process. And, obviously, not every guy who plays double-digit years in the league is going to have the exact same thoughts as you. Some guys are like, yep, I don't want to play preseason ever. Wake me up in September. I will be good. You sound like a guy that would rather have played in the preseason, gotten out there, and feel like you were up to speed. Why was that the right approach for you in your career?
Well, for me, even in my 13th, 14th year, I wanted to know where I was. A lot of people just don't want to do a lot. And let's be real, a lot of people in this generation, if you say, hey, you don't have to play, they don't want to play. I came up in a time where, you always work to get to where you want to be. So in the first game, if my coach told me I'm playing a quarter, I'm going to return everything for a quarter. I'll take some risk in preseason just to get the ball. I don't want to go out there and fair catch the one chance I have. You know what I mean? And then if they said, I want to get in on the running back stuff, I want to see how much I can push myself and see where I'm at. The next week, if it's 2 quarters, I want to do the same thing. And then we always played 3 quarters as far as the veterans when it came down to the third game when we played, because it was 4 of them. And I wanted to play all of those games. I wanted to play a half, go into the locker room, make adjustments, and see how I feel coming out the locker room. They rarely do that anymore. So when you start the first game, when they come out of the locker room to play, it's going to be almost every starter on this football team first time doing it since last year. And people can say what they want. Science can tell them what they want. But you miss something when you don't do that. And the teams that allow their guys to do it, they have a little advantage over you.
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's such a hard – the reason it's hard is because you can't – if Terry McLaurin is not out there, he doesn't get hurt in that way. But also, if he is not out there and maybe there's a miscommunication week 1, and that causes a pick 6, and that doesn't happen if he does play. It's just not it's not black and white, like you're saying. The one guy that I think is most interesting, though, or position that's most interesting in these discussions is the quarterback, because unlike, Terry could gotten, tripped up in practice, and, I guess they're not tackling, but the especially along the lines, the injury risk is basically the same in practice as in the game. Well, in practice, if you leave a defensive end unblocked, he's just going to run by the quarterback because he's wearing a yellow jersey. Out there in a game, different story. He gets blindsided. If your quarterback's out, it could change the trajectory of your season. Do you think about the quarterback position differently because of that at all? And specifically, what do you make of Sam not playing in this final game?
You know what? I understand Sam's a starter now, but I think Sam is still young enough where he needs some extra work. And I watch coaches all the time send their quarterbacks in, and you can see the game plan. Quick game stuff, get the ball out your hand, try to get the ball, get you 3, 4, 5 completions, pull you out. See what I'm saying? Yeah. It's a way of doing it without trying to go out there and go through the playbook and having 7-step drop and holding the ball. I like to see guys play and just get into a rhythm. I think Sam could still use a little bit, but I understand why they're not doing it. But ultimately, what's going to happen? Like, tomorrow Jacoby goes out there. 3 of the 4 of the 5 starters will be playing. So the left guard, left tackle, and the right tackle are probably not going to be playing. But you're going to have some legitimate guys that will probably be in the game anyway, if they were out there. You see, Trent Scott will be out there more than likely. Lucas will be out there. But people go, well, you don't want your starter to play behind them. Well, what if the first game 2 of the guys get hurt and then your starter's right behind them? Then what the hell are you going to say?
Well, at that point, though, the game counts in the standings. So there is definitely a difference.
But see, this is the thing. The games don't count in the standings right now. But if you're not at the position or at the level of health you need to be or being in shape, then you get hurt. The games count then, dude. They count. And it counts, and you miss it because you didn't get yourself ready to go. So everybody wants everybody to sit down and just play. I would just say this. Let the guys leave at the end of training camp, at the end of the season. Show up on the first day of the season then. Because nobody wants people to practice and play anyway. Because Terry comes back in the first game and balls out. People are going to forget about the fact that he got hurt. But then when Terry gets tackled again, the next time, he'll know how to pull his legs from under his body and then don't have to deal with that injury again. So you learn something from everything you go through.
No doubt. And that's why it's such a convoluted conversation. Is there's so many factors that go into it, and some guys are fine, and some guys definitely need it, and it's also bizarre. And then I'm trying to remember who it was, B-Mitch, but there was a player that got hurt recently working out away from the team in the spring, and the team's like, yeah, we're gonna try not to pay him, and it's like, well,
yeah,
that's BS. You just want him to show up not in shape to camp because they sat around for literally 6 months. Like, it's crazy the way the NFL system works, man.
It's stupid, like they tell you, make sure you come here in shape, and then what are you supposed to do? How do you get in shape? You got to work out away from the facility. The NFL needs to change their rules is what they need to do. The guys can't go to the facility at a certain time in the off season. My question would be, why not?
Right.
If I want to go to the facility for 12 damn months, I should be able to. Why? It's my profession, and it's the place that I work for. So why is it I can't go to the facility? They go, oh, we don't want a competitive balance of age. Well, if you're in the NFL and you choose not to work out, you should be the person that has the least amount of advantage. So I don't understand that rule whatsoever.
So this is honestly way more fascinating and way more important than the third preseason game, with all due respect to the dudes that are playing for their jobs tomorrow. Like, respect, I wish you nothing but the best. But this is something I've thought about a lot. And you were, for those that don't know, first of all, Brian Mitchell's with us. If for some reason you're like, what? Who's that voice on 980? Yeah, it is Brian Mitchell. Secondly, B. Mitch was on the NFLPA's executive committee for a long time. Like, he was high up in the union as a player, not just rank and file union member. So something that I've thought about a lot, Brian, is just completely remaking the structure of the league. And I know Zaire Franklin from the Colts talked about this recently. Like, these games right now are getting played for free. Like, dudes in the NFL get paid game checks by the week, and then obviously workout bonuses and stuff in the offseason. There's a certain small amount of money, relatively speaking, that guys that are on like the 90-man roster, but not necessarily the 53, get paid for the offseason. But to me, the amount of money that is in the league, these should be full-time jobs, that there is clearly a lot of time off in the immediate following the season, and I like the month off of July. But I don't see why the NFL and the PA, frankly, don't come together and be like, we got to redo this. We're going to pay guys year-round, and we're just going to change the structure of this to try to make for a better product, and it's better for the health and safety of our players to allow the types of things exactly like you're talking about, use of the facilities year-round. And look, if you're getting paid, like, there's very rare that I will bring up the sheer volume of money these guys make, but if you're going to get paid high 6 figures minimum to play football, I don't think it's unreasonable to have to go to meetings, in the middle of May. That's fine.
Well, I think a lot of guys end up doing it or doing football year-round, to be honest with you, whether they get paid for it or not. But like you made one little thing when you said that they playing for basically peanuts right now. What if the league were to pay these guys half of what they make for a regular season game? So a guy that makes let's say $55,000, $60,000 in a game. What if he make 30 in the preseason? He'll go a lot harder because you know what he makes? He makes about $2,500 to $5,000 or less than that, to be honest with you.
Right.
So that's why guys don't want to play preseason. But you know what the owners do? The damn tickets are the same. When you buy a season ticket, you get the playoffs, you get that with it. But the owners are still getting the regular money, but the players get less. That right there would change guys' mindset of playing in the preseason. You know, when I was playing with the executive committee, I always told them, and I was a lot different than the players. Players, like, they didn't want to practice. I'm like, well, how the hell are we supposed to get good and get ready? Because I went through Joe Gibbs, and I played 14 years. I think I came out healthy. I think I'm as sane as most people out there. Most people think I'm crazy as hell. But ultimately, you know, Coach Gibbs worked the hell out of us. But when I got into a game, it was easy. You know, today, I bet your games are harder than practice. Practice is supposed to be hard for you. Training camp is supposed to be definitely hard. But I hear guys coming out of training camp talking, oh, man, that wasn't that tough. That's crazy as hell.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I talked to Jahan Dotson after practice yesterday. He does not think this training camp was easy. And I think we've seen
Eric
the EB
Bieniemy
effect.
came from my era.
Yeah, right. Bieniemy's out there like, I have a couple of ideas. But to me, like the pay thing, you know, let's say I did this for relatively easy math, right? If you get paid every 2 weeks, like a lot of people do, and you make $26 million a year, you're going to get $1 million every single check, obviously before taxes, because there's 52 weeks and half of that is 26. And right now, you're only getting that 18 weeks a year. Now you're getting, so, you know, you'd be 1.4 per game check during the season, and all that money comes between September and January. And I just don't see why they don't make it a year-round thing to where, hey, you know, the start of the league year, guys get paid, or if you want to make it, you know, the start of the season, but you get paid through the start of the next one. That way the rookies get into it. Like, there's just got to be a way to me to make this, from a time standpoint and a safety standpoint and all that, the full-time job that it is, as opposed to guys having to go pay for stuff in the offseason and not being able to use the team facilities and not communicate with coaches. Just, I don't know. I'm just a guy on the radio, B-Mitch, but it makes sense to me.
But you know what, though? I just think that if the guys can do that, you can defer money, you can structure the money how you want to get paid. You don't have to get paid for those 17 to 20 weeks.
True.
You can defer your money or whatever. You can put it into different bonuses. And I've done that sometimes where I would get a certain amount of my money paid over the off season. And if you get it paid over the off season, now you're not trying to pull money out your account constantly. I did radio, I did events. I used that money to live when I was like in Philadelphia and later here when I was in D.C. But they have many, many ways of getting it done. But the players think of it like this. I get all my money in 4 months. I'd have that money working for me in the offseason.
True.
Why wait for them and let them get the interest off my money?
No, that's true. That totally makes sense from the financial side of it. But I still think the part that you said, shockingly, the part that I said, there's bad math, something I'm very infamous for. But on the part that you said of being able to get into the facilities and all that kind of stuff during the offseason, I feel like that's something.
Oh,
that,
definitely.
Hopefully that can get worked out in the future. Brian, this was great. Always great to chat with you, man. Have a great call tomorrow with Logan and Chick, and we'll talk to you down the road. I'm sure I'll see you in the station next week.
All right, Craig. Take care, buddy. Be cool.
Brian Mitchell, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, oh, God, Anthony, I don't have the schedule in my head. What are we doing when we get back? Oh, we've been waiting to do this all week. First of all, Pick 6 coming up at the top of the hour. Take Command coming at 6:15. But next, The Athletic ranked all 30 NFL stadiums, best to worst. Anthony and I, we think we've been to almost 20 of them, so we'll put together our list, who's ranked too high, too low, and where is FedEx Field? You can probably guess. That's next on the Team 980.
Chris Russell on the Team 980.
They tell us we should not really engage in certain parts of the content process. We should definitely post our content. We should tease our content. Hey, tell the people when things are happening on the show. Put that out there on social media. Then make sure you share the content afterwards. But definitely do not engage with the people who comment on it. It's the deepest, darkest underbelly of the internet. No. Do not read the comments. But every single week, 5:30 on a Wednesday, what do we do, Anthony Haney?
we read
Yep.
those comments, baby.
I'm so glad that you gave us a really good one there, because next week we're gonna have a fancy new intro for this. We just got the big voice guy, old Jim Cutler, to do some stuff for us. And in my head, the fancy intro includes Anthony going, read those comments, and he just gave me the material I needed to work with. He didn't even know that. You didn't know that, Anthony. Tell the people you didn't know that.
I did not at all.
But next week, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to see it. It's a running bit on the show, but also like an actual thing. I'm trying to learn French. My wife and I are going to Paris next year for the Olympics, so I'm trying to learn French. It's incredibly difficult. I'm very bad at it. Tips for someone learning French. You did the reverse. For people that don't know, you started as a French speaker, and I was reading on Wikipedia, so I don't know if it's true, but also Haitian Creole, first two languages, and then had to learn English, which I know is very, very difficult to learn when it's not your native language. French, English, they don't seem compatible. What's your tip for me as I try to learn French?
I would say watch movies in French with English subtitles. That's what I did. I watched a lot of movies in French, but I had the English. No, I watched a lot of movies in English with the French subtitles. So like movies, music, it's kind of something that's like easy, like on the brain. It's not too much information, but you can still enjoy it, and you can see the conversation, because that's the hardest part. Learning like a little word, like to say like, hey, my name is this or whatever, that's easy. But holding a conversation, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, right now I'm really just trying to master, like, I'm American, do you speak English? Because I think in Paris I can get away with that.
Yeah, so je suis américain, et je ne parle pas en français.
See, even the way you said that is not the way Duolingo says to say that. So I'll just have to come back to my new French tutor, Benjamin St-Just. BSJ, I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Sure.
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. First, a question for Anthony Haney. Something I've noticed, and then when we put out some of our social media content, you commented on it. You talked about how you just really don't love wearing headphones. How do you work in radio and just have such an aversion to headphones?
I don't know. It's something about these headphones, to be honest.
So why don't you get different ones?
So I have Beats, but this jack for some reason won't allow me to use my Beats. So I have to use these headphones because it goes hand in hand with the jack.
Yeah, I mean, those are good. I've used those types of headphones before. They're good ones. The ones I have this pair that I have at home, and then I have another pair that's that I keep at the station because I'm irresponsible. And my way of being, well, I'm not irresponsible. I know that I'm not responsible enough to have one pair that travels with me at all times. I will forget them, so I merely have the headphones where I will eventually be, which I feel like is a smart cheat code. But what if we got you some of these? Maybe that would be better.
Do you hear out of both
ears? Yes, I can hear out of both ears.
Oh, I can only hear out of one. It's been like that since I got to this station, actually.
Is it the headphones or is it the jack?
I don't know, Craig.
Well, there's a pretty easy way to find out. What happens if you go plug the headphones into another jack?
All right.
Walk around. The camera's not going to be able to see you, but the radio audience will know the difference. I guess you can reach across. That's one way to do it. And can you hear me now in two ears?
Nope.
All right. So it sounds like it might be the headphones, not the jack.
You think so?
Yes, because you changed the jack and the headphones have the same problem.
Okay. I think we're getting somewhere.
Okay. Which would mean you need better headphones.
All right, I'm bringing my Beats on Monday.
Okay.
And test this same theory because I know my Beats
that or we
work.
got two bad jacks.
Or that.
Which is possible.
Or is it this room, the board? I don't know.
Perhaps if there's issues, you should tell the people who fix the issues as opposed to just existing in a suboptimal existence.
You're right. I think that's also why I do this because I can't hear out of this one. So I might as well hear what's going on,
I understand that.
Around me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, your internet is just really struggling right now.
It's a lot going on with this booth right here, this studio.
Yeah, we're
having technical issues all over the place.
Yeah, we are. It's all right. Luckily, I can hear you just fine. And we'll deal with the fact that you're a little grainy on the interwebs. And your opinions, your takes, clear as day. All right, so here we go. I'm excited for this. We've wanted to do it all week, and it just keeps getting bumped. The Athletic ranked all 30 NFL stadiums. Here's the intro from their article. 3 years ago, 31 NFL writers of The Athletic got to work to rank the best and worst NFL stadiums. The process started by gathering each writer's 5 best and worst. While compiling results, we ranked all 31 venues from best to worst. NFL is now down to 32 teams. New York, they have 2 teams. LA, 2 teams. Obviously, it used to be LA and San Diego. And now that San Diego's the LA Chargers altogether. So, to update the rankings, 30 of the Athletics NFL beat writers again ranked their top 5 and bottom 5 in order. At the time of the previous rankings, SoFi and Allegiant Stadium were not included. They opened in 2020. Here are the updated rankings. And so this is a composite rankings. They say, note, every reporter who has participated in the survey has not been to every stadium. So that's also probably how some of these get votes for best and worst because it's just how it works. But over 30 people voting, the averages, I think, came out pretty good, including the fact that the number 1 stadium is US Bank Stadium, the Minnesota Vikings home. This is, to me, the best NFL stadium that I have been to. It's fantastic. Here's my rankings or my criteria of how I rank an NFL stadium. 1, is it really nice? Is it just like clean, crisp, new, shiny, kind of state-of-the-art feeling from the second you walk in? 2, how's the food? For me, this meant press box food, but obviously I think if you got good press box food, you probably have good food somewhere else in the stadium. Stadiums like Atlanta have really thrived on having an excellent food selection. I think that can be enhanced with the next factor, which is, I think, a separator for a lot of these, which is it distinctly the home stadium of the team that plays there? And this is where US Bank Stadium separates itself from some of the other top ones for me. When you walk in US Bank Stadium on a Vikings game day, you 1,000% know it is a Vikings game. They have a giant Viking ship. They have the skull chant, which obviously, that's not necessarily stadium specific, but they have cool imaging and stuff that goes with it before kickoff. They dim the lights. There's purple LED lights and things like that around the stadium. It is awesome. If you were a Vikings fan, you'd want to go to every single game. The food is probably the best press box food that I had in the league, maybe Atlanta. But everything about it, A+, no notes. It's 66,000 seats, so they pack it out every time. It's in a great location too, downtown. Man, it's just no negatives to me. It's a perfect NFL stadium.
I wish I had been there. I haven't gone yet, and I don't know if I will, but maybe I'll get there. And they also have a great mall out there.
They do. They have the Mall of America.
Yep.
It's the thing that everybody goes to. I did not go to the Mall of America. I did make my national...
At all?
No, we were there for Thursday Night Football. I did not have time to go to the Mall of America. I did. It wasn't my national TV debut because I had done SportsCenter before, but I did make my NFL Network debut with Andrew Siciliano on set before that Thursday night Washington-Minnesota game. So that's always a memorable thing for me from that stadium as well. But outside of that, it was also fantastic. All right, number 2, SoFi. It's got everything. They do, I think, do a good job of making it feel, from what I understand. I have not been there on a game day, of all the lighting and stuff changes, so it is distinctly a Ram stadium or a Charger stadium on game day. It's super nice. The what's it called? The LED screen, the inner loop thing is super cool, and the bells and whistles are awesome. So I think SoFi, obviously. Number 3, Lambeau. I wish that I had been to Lambeau, but my last year on the beat, this was the one trip that I didn't get to go on. The Washington stunk, and they were just like, yeah, you don't need to go to Lambeau. And I was like, but I want to. And
was this 2018?
2019.
20. Okay.
Yeah. Have you been to Lambeau?
I have not, but my best friend has.
Damn.
Yep.
Damn. I would love to go there.
He's a Go Pack Go fan.
It's apparently very, very cool. All right, number 4. Until I went to US Bank Stadium, this was always the standard for me, AT&T Stadium. Dallas, it's so nice. They keep it so well. It is very loud. They say the seating capacity on this is 80,000. I've been there when there's 100,000. It's clearly the Cowboys Stadium. I think some of that, though, it feels almost too polished. It's a little too Jerry nice, but it's awesome, man. It's fantastic. It's actually not that bad to get in and out of either, which is kind of crazy. There are some parking lots that are better or worse than others, but it's I got no problem with it. Been there?
No, I haven't been there.
Yeah, you should go.
I wanted to go down there for Errol Spence's fight because he's from Texas, and that's where he's been fighting his last couple of fights. So hopefully I'll get down there.
All right, number 5, Lumen Field, Seattle Seahawks. Been here. Awesome. Fantastic stadium. Very cool. They have Starbucks in the press box that will actually make you, instead of just being like, yeah, you want a coffee? You can get a mocha latte type of situation, which is a nice perk for snobby journalists like me. But also, the loudness thing is real. If you go out there in a key moment of the game, it is loud as hell. It's also very cool because it's got the open end. So it's it's got personality. You could see an outline drawn of Lumen Field and you'd be like, that's Lumen Field. I think that's cool. The 12th man thing is cool. What was I going to say? And it's right downtown, which is very cool. Like I've been there like 3 times for games, and I always go for a run from my hotel somewhere else in downtown Seattle and like be able to go run around the field and then go back to my hotel like the day before the game, because it's always not too it's never too hot to go on a run in Seattle. So very cool spot. Arrowhead, number 6. Arrowhead's pretty awesome. My favorite thing about Arrowhead, you want to talk about like the atmosphere. You walk through the parking lot on a game day, and it just reeks is the wrong word because that has a negative connotation. The wafts of the best barbecue you wish you could be eating right now are just everywhere. It's awesome. It's very distinct. Look, the tomahawk chop is dated, but the fact that it has those kinds of traditions and personalities, I think, are very, very cool. I've been on the field like right before kickoff. It's super loud. It's awesome. Moving a little quicker through some of these. I have not been to Allegiant Stadium, although I did stay across from it when I was in Vegas. It looks insanely nice. It's very Vegas, but I guess some people say you can get a little lost, and there's almost too many distractions. Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, number 8. I got no complaints about Mercedes-Benz. It was super duper nice. From a fan experience, I know it's also really great because the food is not very expensive. You can get like feed a family of 4 for like $30, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's a blessing.
Yeah, like you can get 4 times the food for half the price you get at every other NFL stadium. That's just a choice that they made. So very, very nice. Getting in and out of there is a bit of a pain in the butt. Unless you're staying at a hotel in downtown Atlanta, then you just, walk. I haven't been to Mile High. I haven't been to Acrisure, which is the Steelers Stadium. Those are 9 and 10.
I'm going there this year.
Oh, nice. M&T is 11. M&T's like, to me, like these next couple are all kind of like they're solid NFL stadiums. Yeah. M&T.
Yeah.
Haven't been to Levi's in San Fran, or really, where is it? It's not even San Jose. Wherever it is. Lucas Oil in Indy.
I've been there.
It's nice. It's fine. Ford Field, nice. Lincoln Financial Field, to me, is like the epitome of like an average NFL stadium. It's green. It's the Eagles. It's got enough space for all the fans. It's loud. They've got cool, like standard traditions that are not at all stadium dependent, like Fly Eagles Fly, in the same way that you've got, Hail to the Commanders here.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is nice, but not like exuberant. It is perfectly slated at 15. The one very unique thing about Lincoln Financial Field, of course, is the fans. It is the only stadium I've ever been to where the away fans know that we are visiting press in the press box and throw things at you. NRG Stadium in Houston, State Farm Stadium. I can't believe this one's this low. In Arizona, like it's nice. And it's hosted a bunch of Super Bowls. Like it's got all the stuff. It's just like not as nice as Mercedes-Benz or Jerry's Spot. Nissan Stadium, like it's whatever. Same thing with Cleveland Browns Stadium, like fine. Raymond James Stadium, it's fine. It's a little old, but it has the pirate ship. That's bonus points. Gillette, same thing. It's fine. Not super distinct. Bank of America Stadium, I've got nostalgia. It's the stadium I grew up going to in Carolina. Nothing special. Soldier Field is cool. I can't believe Lambeau is 3 and Soldier Field is 23. I think the thing, though, is they just haven't really updated it as much. And I think that Lambeau has gotten the necessary upgrades over the years. And Soldier Field, you're like, wow, what a historical place. This place is old. So that's not great. Highmark, Buffalo, it's small kind of feeling, which kind of works for where it is, but not super, not bad, not nice. MetLife, I hate. It's the blandest stadium in the league. The Superdome is cool because it's the Superdome, but there's a lot of stuff that I like. And also because this is a press ballot, getting to the press box and the press box in general at that place sucks. There's one elevator. It's not big enough. The other option is you have to go down 9 flights of stairs. And also the air conditioning for the entire 80,000 seat stadium is right above you. And if you don't know any better, like if you ever are visiting press for some reason at Mercedes-Benz or at the Superdome in New Orleans, make sure you bring a winter coat just in case. Seriously. Because if you get stuck on the row under the air conditioning, your day is going to suck. Paycor Stadium, never been to it. Hard Rock is weird in Miami. Paycor is Cincinnati. Hard Rock is weird in Miami. It's very not special and very bizarre. Jacksonville's definitely you're like, this needs upgrading. And last but not least, Anthony, FedEx Field.
Should I be fist pumping or no?
FedEx stinks.
Worst field, worst training facility.
Yeah.
What else?
Standig, of course, does the write-up for it because this is in The Athletic. It's old but not revered. The basic amenities are outdated for this 21st century world, with the locals choosing to stay away in recent years amid the losing, non-contending, and ownership embarrassment. Cheers from hordes of visiting fans often dominate the atmosphere. Of course, they'll be trapped in brutal traffic on the way out. Suckers. And yes, the rails break, pipes burst, and parking ain't cheap.
I think he hit everything.
Yeah.
He needed to.
Terrible from top to bottom.
Yep.
All right. That was fun.
Did you talk about the food? The price of food, I guess.
Yeah, also expensive.
Yep. There it is.
All right. We did it. I think I've been to over half of these. That's crazy. We'll have to do our official count in the break. We get back, quick look at this, that, and the other thing. Could Noah Lyles and Sha'Carri Richardson pull off the 100-200 doubles at the World Championships for track and field, and a couple of other odds and ends from the world of sports? We get back to the Commanders at 6 o'clock here on the Team 980.
You can listen.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at the top of the hour, who are the 6 guys I've got my eye on tomorrow night for the Commanders against the Bengals in the preseason finale? Not the 6 you probably think. Like, there would be some obvious ones, but guys who I think could shape the roster based off them proving that they could be useful being called up off the practice squad, let's say. So a little bit deeper on the roster, some deep cuts. We'll get to it coming up at the top of the hour. Right now, though, time for this, that, and the other thing. A couple of news and notes, non-Commanders adjacent, and in this case, mostly non-DC sports adjacent, to be honest. Although there's one at the end that is very DC sports, the most DC sports, if you will. And our first one has a DC tie. That is because the world's fastest man is from Northern Virginia. That is Noah Lyles, who today did what a lot of people thought would not be possible. Nobody had done it since Usain Bolt in 2015. He pulled off the double, 100, 200 at the same world championships. He was already 100-meter champion, and he hits the 200 today as well. Arian Knighton, fellow American, comes in second, but Lyles won going away. The only disappointment, Anthony, is that he did not touch Bolt's world record, nor did he actually touch his own American record. He had hit 19, I believe 31 in the 200 meters for the American record last year, and this year 1951. Basically, the only hole in his resume now is the 200 at the Olympics. Had a really poor showing. He was banged up and just not in a great place in Tokyo. And obviously that was a hard games for everybody with the COVID situation. No fans in the stands, nothing. But Lyles survives, by the way, a vehicle crash. It's like they take like these golf cart situations, and his and another cart were crashed into each other, and it was he and a bunch of other athletes on there. And that was before his semifinal. Luckily, he was not hurt at all. Just a little late to the race, as was a lot of his competitors. They delayed the start. He ultimately runs, gets into the final safely, and then goes out today and runs 19.51 for the 200-meter championship. Anthony, have you been able to watch the race back yet? I watched it right before I came into the studio and got on the air.
Yeah, I literally just watched it, and he was out in front the first 100. And typically, that's not his strong suit. Usually it's, the back end of his 200 meters. So,
I mean, that's the scary thing for him is, like, he's worked on that acceleration because he wanted to be able to do the 100, 200 double. And he goes out and wins the 100. And the work shows in the 200. He just won by so much. And he had a good win, too. That's the thing is, like, he had a minus 0.2, a minus 0.2 win. Just going, damn, you wish he could have challenged that world record. But still, a remarkable, remarkable achievement. And you got to wonder what Lyles has left in the tank a year from now in Paris. Meanwhile, in the women's 200, Sha'Carri Richardson trying for the same 100, 200 double, although unlike Lyles, she's more of a 100-meter runner who is running up. Lyles, a 200-meter who was able to pull off the 100. She ultimately runs a personal best but finishes third. Her U.S. teammate, Gabby Thomas, former world champion, finishes second, ran a hell of a race, but nobody could touch Shericka Jackson from Jamaica. She almost got FloJo's 200-meter record. Anthony, do you know when that record was set?
FloJo, 1950.
No, whatever you're about to say, you're about to embarrass yourself. I'm going to cut you off.
Thank you.
1988.
All right, cool.
1988 is when FloJo ran. I think it's 21.3 something. Shericka Jackson today in the low 21.4s. I think hers is 20 or 21.34, and Jackson ran 21.41 today.
Yep.
Just a remarkable run, and she just. It's crazy because, like Lyles, she just came off the turn first, and then there's a moment where I was like, I think Gabby might catch up. Nope. Pedal to the metal, crushed it. So congrats to her on another world championship. Those are wrapping up, by the way. I think the final day of competition is tomorrow in Budapest. That's this. That is, Anthony, what was our middle thing before we get to the crossover event?
The Mystics.
Oh, that's right. Mystics Aces tomorrow. This is a little bit of weekend preview as well. Mystics not in a good run of form. The Aces have now set a record for the most wins in a WNBA regular season, and obviously they have games to go. The Aces went to the White House today as well, so they got to do that after being the champions last year. And, yeah, I'm excited for this game tomorrow night. Excited to see some of the best, but I don't expect it to be entirely competitive as the Mystics are still battling a bunch of injury issues. But who knows? Road game, day after White House celebration. Maybe Eric Thibault's squad can pull something off. We shall see. And then the other thing, this was a very cool announcement today, and I'm excited to see if this leads to anything else for reasons I'll get to in a second. But with Dan Snyder gone and Josh Harris in, the Nationals went to practice the other day, and today they announced a crossover with the Commanders where Harris is going to throw out the first pitch at a Nationals game later in September. And then the October 5th Thursday night football game between the Commanders and Bears at FedEx Field, a bunch of Nationals folks will be on hand, and they're calling this the Capital Crossover. So very cool, and I'm hoping this leads to like community events with the two organizations and some other things. But I've had this question in the back of my head, Anthony. What about Monumental's role in this? Because Ted Leonsis owns a hockey team and a basketball team, and so does Josh Harris. So I do wonder what kind of collaboration, because in the Nationals statement that they put out, they talk like it's Ted Lerner being like, I'm excited to get to know Josh and his team. I don't know how that works when Josh and his team includes David Blitzer, and Blitzer Harris or Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment is one of your biggest competitors in the two teams that would be partnering with the other team that they own in a league that happens to be in your town.
I mean, I think that's part of the reason we haven't really seen other teams do this.
I mean, maybe, but I don't know. It's only been a month, so we'll see. But what's very clear is like nobody wanted to touch Dan. Dan's gone. Hey, What can we do with the Commanders? That's what that's the song everyone's singing. It's a #1 hit.
No, for real it is, though. Sponsors, everybody.
Yeah.
Come on.
Open for business. All right, we get back. Speaking of the Commanders, who are the 6 players I've got my eye on tomorrow? I'm going to pick them. It's our Pick 6 at 6. Next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. By the way, did you ever find your headphones?
Yes, I did find them actually.
Who do you think hid them? Who do we need to fight?
What were you saying?
I said now that you've got your headphones on. Who do we need to fight? Who do we think hid them? Where were they?
So Jeff Walker definitely came into the studio and took my headphones.
If you had given me one guess, 100% Jeff Walker.
Yep.
100%. All right, Jeff Walker. You come in, sometimes you just barge in, you're like, hey, I'm here. And I'm like, cool, like, what are you doing here? Which is fine. Jeff's a delight. But can you please leave my guy's headphones alone? He's a professional radio producer. He's got things to do.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not what depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So He's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. Yeah. The caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just over 10 minutes from now, Take Command gets you set. A Take Command pregame show, kind of. Gets you set for Bengals and Commanders tomorrow by asking the question, what actually is the value of the preseason? Logan and I chop it up in less than 15 minutes. Right now, though, just after 6 o'clock, it is time for our Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick Six at 6.
I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their number one fan.
All right. Am I going to do this at number 1? I am. Go ahead, Anthony. Who's number 1?
Number 1.
Cameron Cheeseman. I cannot believe nobody asked. I went out to practice yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to ask Rivera this. I never got the microphone at the press conference because the press conference was before practice, and sometimes that happens. It's not me yelling at anybody. It's nobody's fault. It just happened. And nobody asked about it on Wednesday, and nobody asked about it after the game. But the long snapper has not had a clean game in the preseason, and he has not, to my knowledge, had a clean practice either. When they've actually done like field goals in game situations. He might have had some great snapping sessions on the side. I certainly hope so. I know he's working on a new technique, but we are now out of time. And Ron told me last week after the joint practices, he doesn't have it straightened out by the game, meaning the Baltimore game, then they're gonna have to start taking it more seriously. Well, they didn't bring anybody in. At some point, you don't have to ask the question because the answer is we're just rolling with Cheeseman. So I want to know how he does. He'll have Tress Way to snap to, both as the holder and the punter. He hopefully will hit Tress in the hands every time he's asked to, and we never talk about it again. But every time I say I hope we never talk about it again, there's another bad snap, and we have to keep talking about it. So yeah, somehow, number 1 on my pick 6 at 6, the 6 guys I want to keep my eye on for Commanders Bengals is the long snapper. Let's go to number 2.
Number 2.
Ricky Strasburg. If he has another great performance at guard, I think that changes the calculus for this team in a really hopefully beneficial way for the rest of the roster. The old NFL saying is you've got to keep 10 linemen. I don't think that's true anymore. Now, I assume that the NFL would disagree with me, and I typically defer to the experts. But sometimes the NFL is just slow to move. They are not as quick to react to rule changes and things that affected old ways of thinking as they should be. They're not as nimble as they should be. And the ability to be nimble is actually what's at stake here. The ability to bring guys up in a pinch from the practice squad in a way that you used to not be able to, and to keep different players than you used to be able to keep on the practice squad. There used to be like age restrictions and experience, and now you can basically keep anyone on the practice squad that you can get there, that another team doesn't sign. They're exposed at all times to being signed to an active roster somewhere else, but you can try to sneak them on. And, obviously if another team were to come calling and try to sign them, you could be like, we're going to sign you to or we're going to make you an offer and you can come to our active roster and just stay where you're at. So if Strasburg shows he can be a backup center and a backup guard, to me, that is one less lineman that you have to keep. And I think in a year where you want to keep an extra defensive lineman compared to the number you usually keep, and you might want to keep an extra receiver, or you're keeping a fullback, then that is extremely beneficial. And I just think there's enough guys that if Strasburg shows, hey, I'm the backup right guard and the backup center, that there might be enough guys on the practice squad that you feel comfortable moving on from a guy like Tyler Larson, or at least risking him to waivers and seeing if you can get him to the practice squad. So Strasburg has a huge role to play here tomorrow night in solidifying that backup right guard spot. And maybe, they don't see it that way. Maybe Chris Paul would be the backup at right guard, but I think Strasburg's played well enough that he might even actually be Sam Cosmi's backup if he were to go down. So that's great. I understand they want to probably keep Larson because they've had so many issues at center, but to me, I think his performance is really important. But then you get to kind of the next wave of guys, which brings us to
number 3.
And I'm going to, by name Aaron Montero, because I think he's the most intriguing of the bunch. Montero's been really good at guard. He has played tackle for them in the past. And again, if he plays well and you feel confident that if you had to go to him in a game, call him up of the practice squad and be like, hey, dude, you're going to play, that is really impactful. And I think there's a lot of guys of Aaron Montero's caliber, or at least what most teams think is Aaron Montero's caliber around the league. I don't think getting him to the practice squad is going to be hard, but he could show you internally a level of competence that gives you a really good feeling about him. Like, hey, we're just going to stash him on the practice squad, but if we need him, we know he's going to be ready. Trent Scott, I think, is in that same mold. Can he put it together and show like, yeah, I belong on this team, or belong as the first guy off the practice squad as the backup right tackle? I think his lack of positional versatility means you're more likely to get him to the practice squad. But if all of a sudden Wiley goes down and Cornelius Lucas is having to play left tackle, or whatever the reason, or you just now need another tackle to call up, can Trent Scott prove that the practice squad is he belongs there? But if you need him, he's going to be ready. And if these guys can prove that, I think you go 9 on the offensive line with a ton of really good options on the practice squad, and you save that roster spot somewhere else. Obviously, we'll do our roster projection on Monday. We'll do another one on Take Command as well. So lots of discussion of that to come next week. All right, moving on. Number 4. Quan Martin. He's had some. I like the way Del Rio put it. It's not that he's had 2 bad games. It's he's had 2 games where he's had really high-profile mistakes. I want to see him continue to bounce back. I want to see how he handles it. I want to see how he handles being out there as a second-round pick when, a lot of other high draft picks around the league probably aren't playing too much. So how does he play? How does he communicate? I think it's pretty self-evident why I think Quan Martin's pretty interesting. Can he carve out a role where you feel comfortable with him on the field immediately in week 1? I think a good day would go a long way to that. All right, next guy.
Number 5.
Dax Milne. Now, you're like, shouldn't it be Dax Milne or Kaz Allen? No, I kind of know what Kaz Allen is. He's a competent receiver with big explosive capabilities and a lot of explosive capabilities in the return game. I want to know if Dax Milne's more than a guy who can run nice routes in one-on-one drills and catch the ball and then get tackled. I want to know, do you have some explosiveness to you? Do you have the ability to generate big plays? Or at least, if you can't generate big plays, can you generate enough plays where you use your route running savvy to get open and be on the same page as your quarterbacks and move the ball down the field? He is a guy that on paper makes a lot of sense as a quote-unquote reliable guy, but his production says he doesn't really do a whole lot. So in the drills, he looks great. In isolated situations, he looks great. In practice, he looks fine. I want to know how he is as a gamer, and if he can't step it up and make some plays, then I would give that roster spot to Kaz Allen. I don't know that they're going to do that. And, his ability to run block is something that I want to try to keep an eye on tomorrow as well, because that's an area where he can make an impact that he's going to be better than Allen. At least he should hope he's way better than Allen as a small, quick, shifty guy, not exactly the prototypical blocker on the outside. So, yeah, Dax Milne over Kaz Allen is my, guy to watch for number 5 at the wide receiver position. And last but not least,
Number 6.
The D-line group, I could pick any number of guys, but I'm going to circle Benning Po'otoe, whose name I probably just butchered again. I had it, and then I lost it. So Benning, I apologize. It's not the worst butcher of his name, but that is not the point. The point is I should get it right. But Benning has been really, really good all throughout camp, and he made some plays the other day in the game, and this is a guy that I think he plays really, really well. I just don't think he fits on the roster, but he could play his way onto someone else's roster. So it's a big day for him. And if you're lucky enough to keep him on practice squad, that's great. But there is also a wackadoodle scenario where Big Phil starts the year on IR and you feel like you need another guy, and he could be the guy. They seem to mess with James Smith-Williams at the 3 technique. They tried Chase at the 3 technique, and then Chase got hurt. James didn't really play there much in the last game, so I wonder if they abandoned that experiment, which would seem kind of weird because I feel like he did a good job in the joint practices with it and made a couple of plays, but, we'll see. FA's played there in the past as well, but he's a guy that plays that 3 technique and could make things even more interesting. He is a good football player who I think has grown enough that he belongs in the NFL somewhere, and we'll see if it's in Washington or ultimately somewhere else. And it could be in Washington later this year after being called up from the practice squad. But we'll see if he can do enough to make it on an initial roster here or elsewhere. Okay, when we get back, what is the value of the preseason? That is the question. Logan Paulson and I discuss the answers and Take Command here on The Hoffman Show.
DC has a new home for your
Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And right now, time for a little Take Command pregame show style on a Friday. Yesterday, when Logan and I sat down after practice to talk about things for our podcast, we had two main topics. One was the roster construction, which you're going to have to listen to the podcast itself if you haven't to hear. But we started off talking about what preseason actually means. We've had so many discussions on the show this week here on the radio about the value of preseason and whether guys should play or not. So I wanted to ask Logan, who's played in a ton of preseason games in his career, what he thinks the value is and how that perspective changes from player to coach to even amongst different positions on the coaching staff. So here that is on a Take Command Friday on the Hoffman Show.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Welcome into the Take Command podcast. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. And if this looks very different because you're watching us on YouTube, it's because if I move this laptop around a little bit, you see both cameras moving because I'm actually sitting across from Logan in his home in Ashburn, not too far from the facility because we just watched the final training camp practice of 2023.
Yeah, it is weird being in person. I think it's the first time on the show we've been in person podcasting.
I was thinking about that. We've been doing this podcast for over a year. We've never actually, and we've done shows together in person, but we've never actually sat together in a room and podcasted together.
It feels different.
Take Command.
It
does.
Weird. Yeah. Your steely blue eyes are making me uncomfortable.
Imagine how your fresh haircut is making me feel. Look at this. Look at this guy all cleaned up. So here's what we got on the show today. End of the show, you'll hear my interview with John Dotson, which who I caught up with after practice. But we're going to talk about kind of the end of the preseason, obviously, as we get ready for the game, Cincinnati, your preseason finale on the sidelines.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about roster construction. So kind of a fundamental question I've been wrestling with the last couple of days is like, what is preseason actually worth? Because we've been talking about the value of getting reps. And it's kind of like this wishy-washy. We're like, yeah, we definitely understand why they wanted to play Sam Howell and why they wanted to get, why teams in general want to get players reps, but you also understand there's a risk. But like, what's the upside if you're ones facing other teams too? It's like, there's all these factors. So like, if I ask you broadly, what is preseason actually worth? How do you answer that?
Well, what I would say is it probably depends, like any good answer. It depends on the staff, depends on their goals. Like there was a couple of years ago where, the LA Rams, they didn't play their starters at all in the preseason, not even for 1 second. And, they ended up winning the Super Bowl. And so like there was value for them. They got an older roster. They don't want guys to get hurt. Here, I think the value, if you really wanted to kind of get in like kind of where I think EB sees the value of preseason or the staff sees the value of preseason, it's really just like more evaluation tools. Like, one of the things about training, like we talk about training semi-regularly on this podcast, is like the idea of specificity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each one of these stages of the offseason gets you something more specific to football, right? So OTAs, kind of like football, you run around, but the contact's not there, a little bit different, right? And then obviously training camp, you put the pads on, you put the helmets on, all those different things. And then the only time like now, especially with the new CBA, you get to go like something close to live is in preseason games. So if I'm EB and I want to know where the team is at, I want to know where the roster's at, I say like, that's where the value is. It's like, it is the closest thing we can get to NFL football legally in the offseason at this point. So to me, that's where I think the value is. And then kind of obviously from a coach's standpoint, that's where the value is. But from an evaluation standpoint, there's also more value there too. Because as we were at practice today, like coaches stand behind the huddle. They're like right there in close proximity to the players. They're coming back. They're always giving feedback, all that kind of stuff. But in the game, it's you. So I want to see how a player is going to react. I want to see what their mindset is. So I'd say 1, it helps with evaluation. 2, it's the closest thing to live bullets you're going to get at any level of football. Even the joint practices, like you're not going to go live in that situation because it's going to lead to a fight. So this is it. And I think that's where the value lies.
Yeah. I guess like following up on that, then what is the most important data point, right? Let's say someone's like solid in practice, but they crush the preseason games. Or the other way around, someone crushes practice, they get out there in the game and it's not as sharp. I think it's really easy to then go back and be like, well, like we have way more data points in practice, and you start to value those. You convince yourself like, oh, we know we can do it in the game. But if a guy never does it in the game, that would seem to be an issue. And we know there are guys that are like that are great practice players or poor practice players. Right. They go out there and they ball in the actual game. So considering how many more reps you get in practice over the course of a summer, and the very limited reps that a guy gets. And, on some level, on some level, it's like you're talking about end of roster, like who makes it, but also, starting spots, like any place that someone's trying to move up or down the roster or trying to move up, prevent themselves from moving down. Like, how do you try to then weight the actual evaluation of training camp versus what you saw in OTAs versus these preseason games?
Well, like with anything, it's an aggregate of all the information, right? Like, so if a guy's is a bad practice player, but he's really good in meetings and he's dialed in, he's a professional, he's understanding, he's on time, but never quite clicks it in practice, but hits in the preseason, I'm going to probably be more likely to be like, okay, then what we saw in the game is what you're going to get here from this guy, kind of thing. It's the same thing, vice versa. Like if the guy's really good in practice, but just totally is not available in the game, like mentally, like just can't handle the pressure, can't handle being by himself, whatever it is, then that's all data that I gotta weigh. Like I played with a guy in 2013 who was excellent in practice, and I thought he's for sure going to make the team. He goes out in the preseason, has a couple false starts, goes the wrong way in a couple runs, and the coach is like, we can't trust him in that kind of context. And it was only, I want to say it was like he played about 25 snaps, and they were like, we've seen enough, and it was enough to kind of sway their evaluation the other way. So it's an aggregate of all the information, obviously, but I do think that those preseason elements are super important because it just kind of gives you the final touch, And so, like if I look at this team in this offseason, I say, man, like this preseason's gone really, really well in terms of evaluation. Like the offensive line's got better, the protection's holding up, the quarterback looks to be in a good spot, and you say, oh, well, it's against the twos. But that's the closest thing you're going to get to live bullets, right? I don't care if it's the twos or the threes. Like they're tackling you, they're blitzing, they're going to hit the quarterback, right? So I think all those kind of data points support support your evaluation. And that's why I think it's not just one thing. It's the meeting room, it's the weight room, it's everything you're doing to kind of say who's going to be the last 5 guys on this roster.
So that's the evaluation side. But I think there's also, if we're being honest, the more important is the preparation side. Because like, by nature, half or more of the guys that you're evaluating aren't going to actually make the team. Right. And even those guys are going to play very limited roles, very limited number of snaps. So there's also the preparation side, which kind of gets to the how question of, because like there was a really good comment on YouTube on, I think it was on our pod, but it was one of the how adjacent videos that I had posted on my page. And it was basically like every second Howell is out there is really important 100%. Because the better he can get, like the closer you realize to figuring out what he is as you evaluate him in 2023, lets you know as soon as possible that whether or not you're in the quarterback market in 2024. 100%. And with the new ownership and whatever, like that is a real question that is looming over the season. Is like, is Sam the guy? And the faster you know that, the better. So getting Sam out there and being like, hey man, these reps are going to help you get better 1% quicker because you get them 1% sooner, like that's hugely valuable to us.
Crazy valuable.
And so it does get to a kind of a question of like, okay, well, how valuable is preseason from a preparation standpoint? Yeah. And if we agree that it's really valuable, then why isn't he playing this weekend?
I do agree that it's very valuable. And I think, at least again, like it's so hard to be in the minds of the coaches, right? Because like if you operated by the rule of everything they said, you'd be like, Sam should play every minute of every preseason game. But there's also a certain level of risk, and there's also a certain level of evaluation and development with other elements of your roster.
Right.
So like, for example, like they've said they want Jacoby to get some reps with the ones. Here's a really good time for that to happen, right? No one's going to balk at that because no one wants Sam to get hurt. Sam's established himself as the guy. And now Jacoby can go out and get those reps with the ones in a situation that's very, very similar to a game. And I have no doubt in my mind that Jacoby will do well with this, right? But it's just another piece of like getting Jacoby prepped. So like, it's so funny. Like I coach high school football, right? And high school football is like it's like the NFL turned up to maximum. And what I mean by that is you get an hour a day to make sure your offense is ready to go. And so the most valuable thing in that situation is making sure the first quarterback gets all the reps, right? But I need to prep also the backup guy too, right? So it's like you're dealing with like this really finite amount of time and these really finite amount of reps. You need to make sure both guys are ready to go, or everybody on your roster is ready to go. Like, I had a conversation with the O-line coach at the high school yesterday. He's like, well, I want the starters to get all the reps. And I'm like, well, I want the backup guards to get some reps too, and the backup tackle, because they might be playing here, maybe not this week, but the following week. And I need to know they know what the heck is going on. So I think that's what you're seeing here. Like, while those reps are very, very valuable for Sam, they're also valuable for Jacoby. And they're also valuable for his relationship with Jahan and Diami and whoever else is going to be playing with him. Like that, I think is so important for fans to understand. Yes, there's tremendous value in these reps, but there's a finite number. So how do you allocate those reps to make sure that you're getting the most growth from all aspects of your roster?
Right. And this is where I think people like we struggle. Here's some societal commentary for you. Like it's where we struggle as a society is like when something is not absolute and there's nuance and it's a gray area and there are multiple answers to a question, like you're going to have differing opinions on it. And I don't know what the correct, like I really struggle with this, taken out from society down to your boy over here. Like I really struggle with this on exactly what the best plan is. Like I think I would probably want to play Sam for a little bit this weekend. I get the Jacoby thing. And the reason we bring that up is like Brissett the last 2 days in practice has been practicing with the ones.
Yeah.
And Ron was asked about it on what's today? Today's Thursday. Yesterday was Wednesday. He was asked about it on Wednesday. And he's like, yeah, we'll give Jacoby some reps with the ones. You know, we want him to get those reps because he's the one that's going to be out there this weekend starting the game. And everyone's like, oh, okay. We thought it would be Jake Fromm the whole time, but okay, sure. And then all of a sudden we go out to practice and it's like, whoa, wait, are the rest of those dudes going to play? Like, is Jahan going to play? Is the 1-0 line going to play?
Yeah.
You know, especially after you lost Terry, like playing Jahan seems very silly to me, but I don't know. He's also a second-year player, so getting him some extra, like if it's valuable for Sam, it's valuable for Jahan.
Right.
But it's like, you know, evaluating that value is such a unique prospect to each individual guy because how dependent are you on other players? And that's, you know, kind of the Howell argument is like, okay, or the Brissett argument for that matter is like, okay, well, the reason we want to get this guy, like Jacoby knows what he's doing, but like, does he feel comfortable with this specific set of skill players? Okay, let's get him out there.
Right.
For a quarterback, they're very reliant on the guys around them. Offensive line, how do you gel as a unit? For a wide receiver, like, yeah, you want to get rhythm with the quarterback, but you're out there running your routes, you turn around and the ball's hopefully going to be there on time.
Yeah.
So it's much more individualized in that way. Which just again makes this all very complicated and convoluted. And like, does Jahan really need more reps on any of these plays, any more reps on these routes, or does he know it? And that's a question obviously the staff has a better answer for, and that's kind of the kinds of things that they're thinking about. But I don't know, I just feel like it's been a bigger discussion this year than it has in years past here. And I think part of that is because Bieniemy comes from kind of the Andy Reid philosophy where Andy has played guys versus, you know, you mentioned McVay earlier and the Rams where they don't really play anybody at all.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's just about, I think if you're thinking longitudinally, if you're preparing for every contingency with regards to this season, at some point Jacoby's going to be playing football for you. And I don't think you want to be in a situation, and that's not, I'm not saying Sam's going to be playing bad. I'm just saying, like, you know, injuries, whatever.
Yeah.
Busted chin strap. He loses his helmet on the sideline. Whatever it is.
Jack literally used that. Is that a football thing? The busted chin strap? Like, oh, okay. Yeah. Jack used that earlier today in the press conference.
So, like, when you're doing substitution drill on usually Saturday in the walkthrough before the Sunday game, they'll be like, all right, hey, you know, Logan, I'm the backup L5 on kickoff coverage, right? So the starter will be like, oh, busted chin strap, and he'll run off the field like he's going to get his chin strap fixed, and then I'll have to come in. You know, so they don't want to say anybody's hurt, anybody's down. It's just like a nice way to be like working substitution drills.
Yeah, got it. Okay, continue with your much more important thought than explaining the analogy that's a known football term.
Yeah. So I kind of heard what we were talking about because like that was such a good.
Jacoby is going to play football this year.
Oh yeah, he's going to play football for you at some point this year for whatever reason it is.
Right.
And so
definitely a busted chin strap.
Yeah, definitely busted chin strap. And I look at the Kansas City Chiefs last year and how Mahomes got hurt in the playoff game, and then Chad Henne, is that the guy? Chad Henne comes in and plays well. And that's not by accident. Like there's preparation that goes into developing that. And I think this is kind of the foundational piece of that development is you're always trying to prep for, I don't want to say every scenario, but as many scenarios as you possibly can. And I think this is one that's very easy to prep. I know you're exposing potentially some guys that are going to play football for you this year to injury in the preseason game. But I also think if I'm going back to kind of an old school mentality as a coach, like, you know, I think coaching at the high schools helped me kind of see this, is I want to see it real time, living color with Jacoby, with the receiver in a live situation, because, you know, cadence is different, motions are different. I want to see it. And so, like, if I'm being truly absolute in that, like, coach's perspective, I think, yeah, I'm okay with them playing this game. I think the thing I would say is, like, as a player and as a talent evaluator, maybe as a head coach, I would probably approach it differently because I don't want I want Jahan to be ready for week 1. I want, Cornelius Lucas to be ready for week 1, or whoever it is, right? I want them to be ready for week 1. So this isn't as important to me. But also, that being said, they do have a bye now. Kind of a bye before season, right?
Yeah, that schedule is so funky. I hate it.
It is, but maybe I think that probably is part of the calculus here too. It's like, hey, if something does happen, like Terry got hurt in the second preseason game, he's got 3 weeks now to get ready, and I think you feel pretty good about Terry being ready in 3 weeks. Like even if it's a different kind of work schedule. So I would say that. I would say, like, as an offensive coordinator, I'd probably treat it differently. As a head coach, I'd probably treat it differently. As a GM or, whatever, I'd treat it differently. But I think there's value to these reps. And I think fans, because of the tradition of the preseason about how the 4th game doesn't matter, everyone's getting ready for regular season, forget that every single rep you have is an opportunity to make the team better. And I forget that too. I forget that, as an analyst now. But it is like every rep has value. So
yeah. So the question then becomes, for like specific to this game this week, like, yes, it's good to prep Jacoby with the ones, right? Like that is a smart thing to have ready for the regular season. But is doing it in practice enough, or do you need those reps in the game? Because the other thing that's happening, like literally today, it was funny, the interview that people hear at the end of the show with Jahan, I say, hey man, you're done with training camp. How's it feel? Right? Like they're done with training camp. Yeah. And so you're now going to get into the mode where you're preparing for Arizona, and you might even do, because you have such a long time, you might do a little look ahead to some of the other teams. Sure. And then really that game week in your regular rhythm, you get in on Monday, and then ultimately practice on Wednesday of that first week leading into Arizona. You're obviously 100% on Arizona. Mm-hmm. But like at that point, Sam's getting all the reps because you are preparing for that game in a regular season mode. So this is your last chance to do it in practice. Is that enough, or do you need to do this in the preseason as well to really feel good about it?
And again, I'm going to say this is annoying, but it depends.
Right.
It depends on your perspective. And just from what I've observed of EB, it's not enough. I want to see more. For Ron, maybe old school Ron, last year Ron, obviously it was enough, right? It's not as important. So I think all of those, it just is a matter of perspective and where you're looking at it. And I will say, as an offensive coordinator, you're so much more competitively tied to that offense, and you want to make sure everyone's ready to go. So it makes sense to me that EB wants this, right? And knowing him as he was my coach in college, where I got to see, he wasn't my personal coach, but obviously he was around, and knowing his mentality, like this makes perfect sense. This is totally in line with his philosophy. And I think there's value here. And a lot of people maybe don't see it because of how the preseason's been treated in recent history. But, again, there is value to these reps. And I do think if I want to know what Jacoby looks like with these guys, there's no better evaluation point. There's no better point of study for me than having him play right now in the preseason.
So do you think we'll see Hal at all?
I
mean, I guess Ron already said no.
Yeah, Ron said no. But so I'd say this. If Hal if there was any doubt at all about Howell's performance, like I'm saying, like he has the same stat line, but he throws an interception.
Yeah.
Or he has a bad 2-minute drive, I think he might play. I think his performance was so comprehensive in the second game that you're like, we don't really need to see anything more. But if there had been any kind of hiccup, any kind of issue, I think he probably would have played. And then Jacoby would have played 2 quarters. And then Fromm would have played the last quarter. It would have been almost, I think, exactly the same as it would have been in the second game. Very, very similar composition. Maybe just a little bit less for Howell.
A little less Howell, a little more Jacoby.
Yeah. And then Fromm, right? So, but I think he was so awesome. I think we talked about that on our last podcast. Like there was not one thing that I came out of there saying, besides the blitz recognition, that I was like, he needs to do better. And how much blitz stuff are you going to get in the third preseason game? Probably
right. Not. Probably not. It is something, I know Dan Orlovsky was talking about this today, that Sam, the one weakness that he's shown in the preseason is blitz recognition and pickup. And obviously that's going to get a lot better as his file of what he's seen in the NFL gets a lot better. And I'm sure that EB and all them are working on that. So, all right, know how, yes, we'll see Brissett. I
mean, based on what we saw at practice today, it feels that way, but yeah. And I think that feels right. Being him, I think it's weird for me because he is such an established player to think that he would play in this game, but I think Brissett for sure. And then I don't know,
I was going to say it seems like the 1-0 line's going to play.
It seems that way, yeah.
Maybe minus Leno.
And it seems that way. And again, that fits with the offensive coordinator's perspective. So I think that would be a little bit unusual, and a lot of people kind of raise eyebrows, but I don't think EB cares. What do you think? Yeah. I think he cares what he thinks and what he needs to see. And so Don't be. What I would say is like we don't know for sure. We're kind of speculating, but
right.
I would say don't be surprised if that group's out there. The whole ones. Don't be surprised.
Yeah, if there's one group that I pull quicker than the rest, or one guy specifically, it's Dotson.
Yeah,
but Dotson and Samuel, I would pull. Like if you want to get them 2 series with Jacoby, fine. I think get those dudes out of there. Like it's just you made it this far. You have less time if something does go forget if they something really bad happens. Like obviously that can happen any point.
But
there is a
time.
time.
Take a long time to get back from. So
yeah,
you gotta be careful.
There you go. That's exactly right. Wednesday on the Hoffman Show. Final segment of the week here on the Team 980. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, what do you got this weekend? What's your game plan for the weekend besides singing to Rebecca Black as long as you possibly can?
I'm looking forward to the weekend. What I have planned is Kayvon's housewarming is tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got a big weekend. The ladies got her housewarming.
Housewarming tomorrow.
You got a bunch of other stuff too.
The kids are moving back into prep this weekend. The upperclassmen, anyway. The freshmen have already moved in. I have my first 2 flag football games of our season. And then I was supposed to take my granddad to go get a manicure.
Are you a manicure pedicure guy?
I've never gotten a manicure. I've gotten a pedicure. I just do a good job of keeping my nose already low, so I don't really think I should waste money on get a manicure. Now, pedicure is different, you know?
Yeah.
I play football. I be having I don't really have dry skin or dry skin on the bottom of my foot or anything, but it's good sometimes to, get that stuff.
Well, you get the nice
clean.
massage. It's great.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll go with Rachel sometimes when she goes. She goes religiously. Her nails are her pride and joy. Literally, she got them done today, and then we went to a place for lunch and picked it up. And the girl behind the counter was like, "Can I see your nails?" And Rachel's like, "Why? Yes, you can."
Why? Yes, you can.
She always has the amazing designs and everything. The woman who does hers is just ridiculous.
How often does she go?
Every 2 weeks.
That's like me getting a hair. Well, I try to go every 2 weeks to get a haircut, but
I'm getting in a haircut zone.
Yeah,
the flow is flowing. But yeah, well, see, when I start doing that a lot, it's because it's getting unkempt, and I'm trying to make it look good on camera. Now I just made it look messy. Whatever. The last 6 minutes of the show, it's going to be a little wild.
Yeah.
But the one key that I learned is very important if you get a pedicure when you take your granddad to go. Make sure that if you're doing a lot of running, which you're about to do with the flag football, make sure they don't take the calluses off your feet.
The calluses? What are those?
Like your feet callus naturally when you do a lot of running or a lot of stuff, and then they'll take that out. They'll scrape the dead skin off.
Oh, okay.
And the problem is if you do that and then go try to play in 2 football games, your feet are going to be super the skin will potentially be raw. Ooh. And that's not going to feel very good. So I might have just saved you some real pain on those flag football games.
Yeah, you did.
All right. So just be I want a runner's pedicure. No scraping.
Duly noted.
Yeah. So it's important information, fellas.
Yes.
And ladies who run. But I feel like most ladies know that. There's just things that women know that we have to learn the hard way. That is life. And many men never learn, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
It's our anniversary this weekend.
Ooh, it is. Hold on, is tomorrow the day?
No, Sunday. Sunday's
the 27th.
Yeah, Sunday's the day. And we're just kind of celebrating by being chill. Next weekend we're gonna do a little getaway trip, Labor Day
weekend.
Yeah, so we're kind of pushing it off in part because there's some big games that we wanted to go to this weekend, and next weekend's we can still do what we want, make it work with the schedule and everything, and not have to sacrifice anything that we want to do this weekend. We're actually going. I got to figure out when I'm going to watch the Commanders game actually because Aces Mystics tomorrow, and obviously one of our really good friends plays for the Aces, so we'll go into that. Spirit are back in town on Sunday. Finally, the World Cup players are all back. Trinity Rodman's playing, and it's against Portland, who has Sophia Smith. So if you want to go to a phenomenal soccer game this weekend, see it at Audi Field. That I'm gonna guess that's not probably close to a sellout. It's probably not a lot of tickets left. They're also doing $2 beers. So
dang, that's lit.
It's a good time. If you want to go to Audi Field on Sunday.
What time is this game?
5:00.
Ooh.
Do I need to inquire about some extra tickets?
4 for 4. I actually might go because I'm done with work at 4. So
okay, yeah. I'll see when I talk to some folks and what I can do. So yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll have a nice little dinner. We also talked about going to find a really because we got married overseas, as some folks who've been listening to the show for the full year. remember. And so I was like, we should find a full English breakfast to celebrate, or a full Scottish breakfast. We're reminiscing about some of our meals and how great breakfast was in the UK. That's a very distinct thing. Either some people are like, yeah, I know what a full English is, and it's terrible. We quite enjoyed our full Scottish breakfast the morning before we left for our venue in our hotel in Glasgow. And so we got to find a full Scottish breakfast at some point this weekend. That's the important stuff we're doing.
That's lit, man.
Yeah.
That is very lit. When you go to the Aces game tomorrow, or the Mystics game tomorrow, both. When you go to the game tomorrow,
yeah,
say hi to DJ. You might see him.
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah. We'll do that. All right. To wrap out the show, like we do every day, it is time for Real Things, Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Okay, Anthony, you're driving today, so I know we got Commander's lemonade stand, right?
Before we get to the Commander's lemonades,
what else we got? Give us our options. You're in charge.
All right, we also have Noah Lau. So today, after his record-breaking performance, he spoke to the media, and he threw a little shade. I'll let you decide how shady it was, Craig.
Okay.
Watch the NBA Finals, and they have world champion on their head. World champion of what? The United States? Don't get me wrong. I love the U.S. at times. But that ain't the world. That is not the world. We are the world. We have almost every country out here fighting, thriving, putting on their flag to show that they are represented. There ain't no flags in the NBA. We gotta do more. We gotta be presented to the world. Thank you.
And he gets applause from the track and field media. I love that. That's hilarious. Look, I think that is the most silly in the NFL because there's no other. I guess there's the Canadian Football League, and look, if the Super Bowl champions faced any other football team in the world, they would crush them. The same for the NBA champion. If they played the winner of the Spanish league, which is probably the second best league in the world, they would win in a 7-game series 10 times out of 10. So they are the best team in the world, but they have not done the thing that would crown you world champion. So I get Lyle's point. It is a little bit silly. You know, baseball, they call it the World Series, and it's between New York and LA? Oh, really? Now, of course, there's international players. So it's the best players in the world, but have you actually put out the best club team? Technically, you haven't proven that. I think he's got a point.
So you don't think it was shady?
Oh no, it was shady.
Okay, just making sure.
But you can be shady and right.
Yeah, both things can be true.
That's all I'm saying. All right. Thanks to everybody. Brian Mitchell for coming on. Clint Yates for coming on. Everybody listening all week. Let's do it again next week, shall we? See you then. Hey, I'm Craig Hoffman.
And I'm Logan Paulson.
And together.